We need some fucking music to get us hype, I think. To get us going. Top 100 players in the NBA. That's right. I've unlocked my full name. So, for those of you who haven't really been here before or haven't seen one of my top 100 lists, preseason, my top 100 lists are very predictive. I try to figure out where these guys might fall by the end of the season, whereas my end of the season rankings are reactive. Okay, so there's not too much movement between the end of last season and this season. I try to figure out a few guys here and there that I think could have breakout seasons. There are no rookies for the first time. I think this is my third time doing a preseason list. No rookies for the first time. I just don't think I looked at the rookie class. I definitely feel like somebody will be in the top 100 from the rookie class. It's just usually how it goes. But it's difficult to figure it out. It's difficult to figure out who that is going to be. Yeah, these are projective. I like doing it that way because it's just a little bit more fun. You know, if we're just doing reactive lists every other month, it's like, you know, there's not that much change. Trying to figure out who's going to be a top 100 player. If I had to pick a rookie, I would have picked Reed Shepherd. I just feel like he looks the best, but I don't know if he's going to get playing time. And I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good about this list. Let's get right into it. We got to talk about the dropouts. Cut the music. It's time to get serious. We got to talk about the dropouts, the guys who are no longer in the top 100. Risha Shea could maybe make it. Zach Edey, obviously. But here's some guys who dropped out. And again, since this is a projective list and we're basing our previous rankings and really just the whole entire list on the end of last season stuff as well. Most of these guys fell out because other guys came into the list. So at the end of the season, if you played in less than half the team's games, I don't put you on there. So there are guys who are not in the list last year who are injured, except special, exceptions. Like I put Embiid in there. Jeremy Grant out. Didn't feel good. I definitely think Jeremy Grant's a top 100 player, but I don't know. I'm just kind of looking at it. They went and got Didi Avdija. I could see a world where Jeremy Grant just kind of falls off enough to not be a top 100 player. Kyle Kuzma, same thing. Kyle Kuzma, I'm kind of done with, to be completely and totally honest with you. Dylan Brooks, just an example of there being people I wanted to add in. Yusuf Nurkic was a surprise one last year. He was good for the Suns. He was very important for what they were doing. I would be shocked if we get a repeat of that season, just full stop. Norm Powell, again, just too many people. Lou Dort, too many people. KCP, this one was a little bit surprising to me, but he just didn't make it. Didn't make it into my list. Tobias Harris, same thing, too many people. You guys know I'm a Tobias Harris defender, but I just don't see it this year. Aaron Nesmith, who I do like, and Terry Rozier. And another one, Josh Hart's not in my top 100. I guess I have a blind spot for Josh Hart. I think he's a good basketball player. I see top 100 lists where he's like in the 60s. I don't see that at all. Like I was looking at my top 100, and I just liked all of those guys more than Josh Hart, who I do think is a really good basketball player. But, yeah, I don't know. Nesmith was a tough one to leave off as well, just because I think he's a good basketball player. I think he's a very good defender. But, again, if you're in the 90s from a year ago, and I'm adding in guys who are hurt and were off the rankings last year, or guys who I'm predicting have like breakout seasons, just naturally some guys are going to come off. Honorable mentions. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. Keontae George, all of the guys who are dropouts, also honorable mentions. But Keontae George, I wanted to put him in there. Andrew Nimhard, I wanted to put him in there. Jabari Smith Jr. has been in my preseason top 100 lists every time. It hasn't happened yet. I'm not banking on it anymore. Cam Thomas was a difficult omission. Podzimski, you got to give him a shout out because he was very good as a rookie. Gafford, got to give him a shout out. One of the best backup bigs in the league, although I honestly, God, don't know if he's going to be a backup big. We'll see. He might be a starter. Ayton was kind of a tough one. He had a really solid end of the season last year, but don't know how much I believe in that. Zubac's also a tough omission. And Max Strus, who has an ankle injury, is going to miss a good amount of time. But I do think Max Strus is a good basketball player. I don't think he's a top 100 player, obviously. He's not on this list, but I did want to give him a bit of a shout. So, Zubats was a tough omission because I do think he's going to have a really nice season with James Harden in the pick and roll. But, man, I look at some of these guys on this list. The NBA is fucking loaded, you know. Obviously, some guys in this top 100 are going to be injured. There are going to be guys who have disappointing seasons. So, you know, it's all just prediction and projections at this point in time for me. So let's get it started. This first person, we're immediately shooting from the hip here. This is I usually like to reserve the 100 spot in these rankings for a guy that I'm planting my flag on. And I'm planting my flag on this guy's hill. I think he's going to have a good season. I think he's going to be a great basketball player in the NBA. And I think it starts this year. You really start to see he had a really nice preseason. That is Amen Thompson from the Houston Rockets. Now, if you followed my preseason predictions at all, you know I think that the Rockets are going to have a surprising season. And I think Amen Thompson will have a very good, a very big role in that. One of the better defensive rookies we've seen in quite some time. He had a 2.3 defensive EPM last year, 2 steals per 36, an incredible defensive playmaker, uber athlete, nice, good with the ball in his hands, a very quick first step, explosive finishing above the rim, very good court vision. But the jump shot is a concern. I don't know if it'll ever get there, but I do think he does so many other things so well that even without a jumper, he will impact the game tremendously. And I'm excited to see what the season looks like for him with the Rockets. Now, I will say this about Asar, his brother Asar. Obviously, you know, I know he's dealing with blood clots. I don't think he's been cleared to play yet. I know he's been doing individual drills, so I just kind of assume he'll be back soon. But I was doing some research. There are Pistons fans, and this just might be doomer shit, but I've seen Pistons fans who are concerned he might never play basketball again. I don't know how much of that is just pure doom and gloom, but just keep that in mind. Asar Thompson is yet to be cleared to play basketball with a blood clot thing, and there are people who are concerned. So, just a little thing to monitor moving forward that hopefully we get some good news about Asar Thompson soon. So anyways, Amen Thompson, you know, this is just pure, slightly biased. I'm a believer in him. I think this is going to be a good year for him. So I want him to be on my top 100 list just to say, if it does happen, I was here and I called it. By the way, these rankings are where they were at the end of season. Bogdan Bogdanović had an incredible season a year ago. I just think he's a very underappreciated basketball player. The Hawks were just so much better when he was on the court last year. He does so many things well offensively, can play on ball, can play off ball. Just a very nice weapon to have. 37% from three on 8.1 attempts per game. Again, somebody who can create for himself, somebody who can get downhill, somebody who can finish at the rim, somebody who can shoot threes. I think the Ben and Skin thing goes live at 7. I could be wrong, though. And I expect another really, really solid season from Bogdan. Why does he drop a little bit? He's just getting a little bit older. And again, I just think that there are some guys who are getting better. But Bogdan's a very good player. Yes, I do remember when Nick told me he was on the Mavericks, and I was very excited for a little bit. Interesting to monitor if the Hawks are a little disappointing or underwhelming, whatever the case may be. Interesting to monitor. An interesting name at the deadline. Could be moved. Will very much help a team if he gets traded to them. Or stays with the Hawks and balls out. Colin Sexton, who also had an incredible season for the Utah Jazz a season ago. Just a good basketball player, man. I think he has to be on this list. I don't think there's a world where Colin Sexton is not a top 100 basketball player. He's just a dog in every sense of the word. A sort of, kind of a throw-in in the Donovan Mitchell trade in the grand scheme of things, but has really kind of blossomed into a good player for this Utah Jazz team. I think people forget how young he is as well. Gets downhill, 67% of his shots at the rim, unassisted, finishing 68% at the rim. Had a very good season shooting the three ball last year, which has always kind of been a little bit of a concern for him. And he's a hard-nosed defender. You know, his size kind of limits him from being a great defender, obviously, but he plays hard. He makes plays on the defensive end. I just think he's a good basketball player to have. Yeah, and he does. He is a microwave player. He has spurts where he gets incredibly hot. It does look like one of the best guards in the NBA. So I'll always respect Colin Sexton. He plays incredibly hard. And you always want a guy like that on your team. This next guy. So if this guy plays a decent amount of minutes, and this guy plays a good amount of basketball, which has been a problem throughout his entire career, he is unquestionably a top 100 basketball player. And I would say even beyond that, top 75, maybe even better than that. But the problem is he has yet to show at any point throughout his career that he can play an extended stretch of basketball. Now, he put on some muscle this offseason. That's what everybody has said. So he might be better prepared to play in some basketball games, and beyond that, play more than 15 minutes a game. I'm, of course, talking about Jonathan Isaac, who, when he is on the basketball court, does pretty much everything. He's one of the best defenders in the sport, full stop, at any position. He led the entire NBA in defensive EPM last year, EPM being estimated plus minus. I have some advanced stats on here. Just it helps us sort of figure out who a player is and stuff like that. It's not the end-all, be-all. It's not what I based my rankings on, but it was just nice to have as a little baseline, something to go off of. But he led everybody in the NBA last year in estimated plus minus, which I do think is probably the best all-encompassing catch-all NBA metric. The Magic were 9.6 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the court. They had a plus 12 net rating when he played. I mean, they were incredible when he was on the floor. Just an incredible defensive player. Absolutely, if he was somebody who played around 30 minutes a game, was healthy, not only defensive player of the year candidate, but he has defensive player of the years. He won't be focused until after the election. Post-election Isaac, where Trump loses, he might be the greatest player of all time. Just playing with so much anger. A 105 defensive rating when he was on the floor. And also on top of that, really not a terrible offensive player. So I think if Jonathan Isaac plays a good amount of minutes, he has to be a top 100 player. But again, it's just, can he do that for really the first time in his career? I would probably guess no, and that's why he's the low down here. Next up, Keegan Murray. A weird season last year for Keegan Murray. Showed a lot of flashes defensively, which I think if you're a Kings fan makes you feel very, very good. This guy looked to be at times this wing stopper that they desperately needed. However, the three-point shooting took a fairly sizable step back. Had a 23-game stretch where he shot 43% from three. The rest of the season, he was 33%. So really just one stretch of good three-point shooting surrounded by bad three-point shooting the rest of the season. They need that to tick up. Like, for Keegan Murray to be what they really need him to be, if they want to improve their ceiling, if their ceiling is going to be, hey, we not only do we want to make the playoffs, we want to win playoff series, Keegan Murray has to blossom into this guy who is a true 3-and-D player who can create his own offense, probably around 40% from three, and is like a legitimate wing stopper. Unfortunately, last year we just saw too many inconsistent glimpses at that, and this will be a big season for him because if he improves and looks like that 3-and-D wing, he's gonna make a fuck ton of money in the NBA, man, a ton of money. And it is definitely a little bit worrying that their spacing might be a problem, but they're really gonna need him. He like unlocks their what they want to do offensively if he's hitting threes at a consistent clip. This leads me into my next guy. These guys are kind of comparable. This dude is very underappreciated. I think after getting traded, a lot of people kind of looked into how good of a basketball player Denny Avdija was a season ago. But this is one of the most intriguing players in the league for me this upcoming season. Just got traded to the Portland Trailblazers. Apparently, he's looked very, very good. There's been some rumors that some people say that he's been the best player on the Trailblazers. And if he continues to develop based off what we saw last year with the Wizards, he is a very good player and has a skill set that a lot of contending teams would kill to have. It's interesting he's on the Blazers, but it's a really nice building block for them to have, and I really love that trade for him. He looked very good defensively last year for the Wizards. From February onwards, you don't want to put too much into stats or guys' stats on really bad teams in February, March because they're bad. But 18.5 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, 3.5 assists, 36% from three from February onwards. That's good stuff right there. Combined with being a very, very good defender. Just a multi-talented player who does a lot on the basketball court, defends, can play make, can shoot, can get downhill. A good basketball player to have, man. And the Wizards were way better when he was on the court versus when he was off the court. Obviously, they were a shit team anyways, but it's always nice to see guys with good on-off stats. Difficult player to rank here, Nick Claxton. Kind of a disappointing season for him a year ago, obviously on this horrible Brooklyn Nets team. The Brooklyn Nets are going to be horrible yet again. But we are only 2 years removed from Nick Claxton being a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. It does feel like his defense, his defensive impact feels very tied to how good his team is. So when they had KD and Kyrie and James Harden and they were contending for a championship, his defense was incredible. When the team is bad, it's just kind of more difficult to notice, right? But he still is a great defensive player, obviously. Great rim protector. Opponent shot 9.5 percentage points worse at the rim when Nick Claxton was there to contest. Obviously, a good pick and roll player. Great pick and roll player. 73% at the rim. Explosive athlete. Has a little bit more in his offensive bag than I think some people might give him credit for. But this will be an interesting year for Nick Claxton. I'm not super confident in his spot here, but he is such a good defensive player that I think we have to acknowledge that. Mike Conley, he drops a little bit just because he is getting older, but I do think he is such an important piece to this Minnesota Timberwolves team. A great floor general, a great stabilizing presence to have on the court. And that alone makes him a top 100 player, in my opinion. Shot so well from three last year. 44% on pull-up threes was knocking him down. Nearly 40% from three in the postseason, although he does have a bit of a reputation in the postseason, and he did have moments in the playoffs where he was a little bit of a ghost or was injured, which is a problem for Mike Conley as well throughout his career. But again, the three-point shooting, the playmaking, not the defender he once was, but still a decently solid defender, just getting older, and you always have to worry about how many games Mike Conley is healthy for, but still a really solid player, man. Honestly, part of me feels like Minnesota's offense hinges on Conley's effectiveness as a distributor. I think him being on this team has helped out Anthony Edwards tremendously. Now with Dante DiVincenzo in the mix, I don't think it's like as crucial as it once was, but yes, I do think last year in Mike Conley's tenure with the Timberwolves, him being on the floor is very important for their success. Next up, I have P.J. Washington of the Dallas Mavericks. An important player for this Dallas Mavericks team, was incredible in that series against the Oklahoma City Thunder last year. 17.7 points per game, 47% from three in that series against the I mean, just crazy what he did against them, huh? Just crazy. And you look at the rest of the postseason, his postseason averages in general, 13 points per game, 34% from three. So do some math. Outside of that Thunder series, it was a little bit rough for P.J. Washington at times offensively, but I just think he unlocks a lot of things for this Mavericks team. Obviously, his size at the four, his switchability and versatility defensively, and also his versatility offensively. I mean, the efficiency numbers aren't great. They don't love P.J. Washington. 53% true shooting last year. That's not a good number. That's below league average. But again, there's different things that he can do offensively. Can shoot the three ball. I think last year was an anomaly in the sense that I think his three-point shooting will tick up, especially playing alongside a guy like Luka Doncic, and he was 25% or something like that from the corner. I mean, that's just weird. I don't expect that to happen again. But a solid three-point shooter, can put the ball on the deck. He's got a nice little float game in the middle of the floor. When he gets to the middle of the floor, he's got a nice floater that he likes to go to. We've seen him post up from time to time as well. But he's going to be very important for this team, and he's going to be very important defensively. Very important defensively. And I think if you're the Mavericks, you want him to finish the season higher than this, just because that's how important he is going to be. Another important player, this guy barely played a season ago on a new team, Marcus Smart, only 20 games last year. A difficult player to rank because I don't know what we're going to get. You don't want to base him fully off of playing 20 games last year, but I do think on this Grizzlies team, he's going to be very important. I think he's going to be a good, connective playmaker for them. His defense is going to be very important, especially if he does start alongside John Morant. And yeah, I mean, he's only 2 seasons removed, folks. He's only, 3 seasons removed from winning Defensive Player of the Year. Remember that? Defensive Player of the Year. A difficult player to rank. Definitely looking a little thick in preseason. Had a kid recently, so congratulations to him on that. Maybe we get a dad. A new dad boost. You see that from time to time. Good defensive playmaker. And again, I don't know. It's difficult to say this because I think a lot of people's ideas about Marcus Smart is that he's a kind of a ball stopper and can have some head scratching decisions at times, especially late in games, which is true. But he is a solid, connected passer, and I think he's important to have on the court. So Marcus Smart, we'll see. 20 games last year, kind of hard to base anything off of that, but here we go. Malik Monk signed a very friendly contract with the Sacramento Kings this past season. I personally thought should have won Sixth Man of the Year last year, but Naz Reid was also a very, very good candidate. I love his playmaking off the bench. It's very important for the Kings. It's very rare that you can find a guard like that off the bench who you just feel so comfortable with running your offense, and then also plays well alongside your 2 stars in Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox. 15.5 points per game, 5 assists per game last year from Malik Monk. Both of those career highs. Nearly 40% on catch and shoot threes. Very, very efficient in the pick and roll as the ball handler. And yeah, great athlete. Gets downhill, explosive, finishes above the rim. Has just some plays every now and then that make your jaw drop. I mean, just a fun player. Absolutely love Malik Monk. Voters were gobbling perimeter defense all year. Time Lord was going to win before he got hurt, so they just gave it to a different Celtics player. Yeah, I mean, that Marcus Smart Defensive Player of the Year campaign was one of the most fucking insane things I've ever seen. One of the most insane things I've ever seen. He would be a great Maverick. Oh, any team would love a Malik Monk. Having a guy like this who's cool with coming off the bench and can basically just run your offense, and you feel completely cool about it. Very, very, very few players in the league you can talk about like that. And him coming off the bench does make sense. He's not a good defender, so he can't really be in the starting 5 unless they just want to say, fuck defense, we're scoring 140 points. He would have been the second best player on the Mavs 2 years ago. Yeah, well, that's not difficult to say. That bar is low. That bar is low. Next up, we get into the 80s. We're into the 80s now. Anthony Simons, 46 games a season ago. Such a weird player. I think his talent level is much higher than this, but it's a weird situation in Portland with those 3 guards, and also his durability is a bit of a concern. If I'm just doing a projective thing, guys who are healthier and play more are a little bit more consistent for me and are easier to rank higher than guys who have dealt with injury problems throughout most of their career. But Anthony Simons, is he a good team, a good stats, bad team guy? Some people might call him that. I don't really think that's a thing that exists. But 22.5 points per game, 5.5 assists per game last year. Those were both career highs. The Portland Trail Blazers offense, 4.5 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the court. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that their offense fucking stinks. So just having a good offensive player on the court helps them out tremendously, obviously. And we know he does, man. He bombs threes, 38% from 3 last year. Nearly 9 attempts per game, 40% of those attempts unassisted. So creating 3 balls, he can catch and shoot. Just a versatile offensive player who I'm interested. Like if the Magic were to say, "Hey, he is a terrible defender." If the Magic were to say, "Hey, we can survive his defensive miscues with all the great defensive pieces we have. We just need somebody. We need somebody to pack a punch from the guard position offensively." I would be so interested to see what that looked like. So interested. But unfortunately, he's on the Trailblazers, who I do think will be terrible this year. And with Shaedon Sharpe, who's injured, I think, already, right? Scoot Henderson, it's kind of difficult to see where Anthony Simons' career ends up. Would be surprised if he's on the Trailblazers much longer, but, we'll see how it goes. Anthony is, at best, a 6-man on a mid-team, not going to lie. No, I don't know if I would say that. I mean, it's hard to think of the right context for a guy like him. to be on a winning team and start and have the ball a bunch. But, I mean, off the bench, though, if he went to a good team and was like their sixth man, that's a great fucking sixth man to have. Like, that's an incredible sixth man. Future Spur, that's interesting. Next up, we have Austin Reeves from the Los Angeles Lakers. A bit of a disappointing season last year for him, I think. Didn't really take the full step forward that we were sort of expecting. One thing I just want to see more from Austin Reeves is just a bump in volume. He just needs to shoot the ball more, I think. But good series against the Nuggets. Nearly 17 points per game. Did shoot the three ball really poorly, but at times for them looked like the only guy who wasn't pissing his fucking pants. Good playmaker, good ball handler. Just a really nice complementary piece to have, especially alongside guys like LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Good connective passer, can do things with the ball in his hands, can lead the offense if you need him to do that at times, and also just plays really well off of LeBron James. Slightly Lakers bump. I think this is about fair, huh? Is this not fair for Reeves? Where are other places listing him at? Unathletic Malik Monk. He's a better defender than Malik Monk, for sure. Definitely a better defender than Malik Monk. All right, next up, we're just getting all of the white guards out of the way. Tyler Hero, another difficult player to rank, often injured, 42 games a season ago. A very sneaky, and it's been this way for most of his career. Very sneaky, great pick and roll ball handler. Like his two-man game with Bam Adebayo is really good. Can I sorry, fuck. Why do I have Twitter up? Can I just sneaky? Yeah, we're going with all the white tropes. Can I say something really quickly here? I see these pop up all the time. The 3D tracking of Juan Soto's home run. MLB does this, where they 3D track this. Can I just ask, and admittedly, somebody tell me if I'm being an idiot or this is coming across old man yells at cloud. What the fuck is the point of this? What am I getting out of this? Hey, look at the 3D render of a 3D stick figure of Juan Soto rounding first. Why don't I just watch Juan Soto do it? Literally, why don't I just watch the actual play? I mean, it's basically this with stick figures. What am I trying to... I really don't understand this shit right here. What am I, like... I don't get it. All right, anyway, sorry. Tyler Hero, good offensive player. Obviously, we know that. Again, a similar theme with some of these guards down here at the bottom of the list who are talented offensive players. They're good, with the ball in their hands. They can play off ball as well, but there's usually one glaring weakness for these guys. That, of course, being defense. And yes, Tyler Hero is horrendous defensively. And also just an inconsistent offensive player, Really kind of boils down to that as well. But talented nonetheless. Next up, Trey Murphy, who just a couple hours ago signed a new contract extension, over $100 million, 4 years, well-deserved. 57 games a season ago, the Pelicans were 5.7 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the court. A great floor spacing threat, 37% on catch and shoot threes. That doesn't sound super high, but it's one of those things where he spaces the floor so deep, and he can bomb deep threes that his floor spacing is pretty tremendous, right? Even though the numbers might not be as great as you would expect. 1.18 points per possession on spot-ups, 1.06 point per possession off screens. I love me some three-point shooters who can fly off of screens. Just adds a whole nother wrinkle in teams' offenses. And also, lengthy player, tall player, solid defender. Plays really, really well next to Herb Jones. And yes, he does need to be starting. They need to figure that the fuck out. I really think the Pelicans could have beat the Thunder last year if they had Zion. I don't think so. I see where you're coming from. Because they did kind of, Zion plays, they do kind of have size. This is predictive. And if any of these seem low, like at the time, there's so many good NBA players, man. Like we're going to go through this list. There are guys who I had in the 60s where I was like, really? And then you get through you get to like the top 50, and it's like, holy shit, man, this league is fucking stacked. Love me some Trey Murphy, really good player. Hope he's healthy this year, and hopefully he starts. Josh, okay, so here we go. Josh Giddey at 85. This is obviously predictive, and I will just straight up say it. I had him higher than this, and then I thought about it more, and I was like, I have to knock him down. I have to knock him down. Josh Giddey over Murphy. Yeah, the idea being, right? The idea being that he's going to have more. Okay. All right. It's okay. He's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to be probably, I'd have to imagine, the engine of their offense. 17 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, 7 assists per game, and 32 career games without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Still an incredible playmaker. 98th percentile in Basketball Index's playmaking talent score. What the fuck goes into that? Don't really know, but it does pass the eye test. He is a good playmaker. And okay as a pick and roll ball handler. So we're going to see. I mean, this is it for Josh Giddey. If Josh Giddey doesn't have a very good basketball season, then he's somebody who's due for a contract extension. I saw reports that he's looking for $30 million a year. No fucking chance he gets that unless he has a good season. If he has a good season and their offense kind of hums with him having the keys of the offense, and he looks like a solid floor general, and he's operating out of the pick and roll, and he's, they're flying out in transition, he's going to make a fuck ton of money. Or he could be on the Guangdong Tigers in a couple years. Maybe. 30 million with no jump shot as a guard. That's what he wants, man. That's what he's asking for. Don't look at me. I didn't say it. That's what he wants. If Lonzo stays healthy, you playing Giddey over him? Absolutely. Yes. If you're the Bulls, yes, your season is Josh Giddey. Let's be honest. Your season is Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey's still, 22 years old. You're giving Josh Giddey the keys, and you're saying, all right, are you somebody we can build around, yes or no? If the answer to that question is yes, here's $30 million, and let's go. If the answer to that question is no, we will let your restricted free agency play out, and we'll figure out what the fuck we have to do from here. Let's be honest. Lonzo Ball's not a part of their future at all. So that decision is easy. Happy Lonzo's back, though. I hope he has a great season. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to shit on Lonzo. But he's going to be throwing lobs to Willie Cauley-Stein on the Monkey Kings. Oh, not the Monkey Kings. What city were they in? I did see that Willie Cauley-Stein is... Did he sign with the Monkey Kings, or the Monkey Kings were interested in him? Josh Giddey's not good enough a playmaking creator to overcome his shooting concerns. Well, congratulations to Willie Cauley-Stein on signing with the Monkey Kings. All right. Here we go. Next ranking right here. This might be tomato worthy, but you know what? I think this is fair. And if this ends up being true, I think we're 100% okay with this, because there's definitely a world where this guy's not a top 100 player in the NBA this season. I've seen plenty of rankings that do not have this guy in the top 100. This team is very hopeful this guy will end up being in the top 100. And if things just go according to plan, he absolutely will be a top 100 player this upcoming season. Yeah, at 84, I have Victor Wembanyama. No. Klay Thompson is here at 84, new member of the Dallas Mavericks, obviously. Had a terrible playing game, 0 of 10 from the field. That sort of is how everyone remembers Klay Thompson and thinks that Klay Thompson is. Let's not forget, right? Bit of a slow start to the season a year ago. Kind of a weird season with the Warriors, where it was kind of obvious that things were going in a poor direction there. Went to the bench, went back to the starting lineup. Over the last 46 games of the season, he was at 18.5 points per game on 40% from three. Klay over Trey. I went with Klay over Trey Murphy for the simple fact being, one, Trey Murphy was injured a bit last season and is also dealing with was dealing with a hamstring strain at the start of this season. And two, I think this Mavericks system works so well for Klay Thompson that if he shoots 40% from three, he's going to have a really fucking good year. Like that's really what it is. You know, not really fair to Trey Murphy, but if this is just a predictive list, a guy who fits like a glove in what this offense does, 40% from three, which I think is possible. 38% on nearly 8 catch and shoot attempts a game last year. 40% on spot up threes. 42% off of screens last year. That's a really good number to have. 5 field goal attempts a game off of screens, which is really, really high. And also a point per possession in isolation. I mean, that's not terrible. All the Mavericks need this guy to be is a knockdown three-point shooter, which is what he's been his entire career. So if that happens, he's going to be really, really good. Really, really good. Play always better in the second half. I mentioned that in my video a couple nights ago. The Mavericks, or Klay Thompson, has historically been a slow starter. In October especially, historically been a slow starter. So just keep that in mind as the season starts. Keep that in mind. Do you think the Mavs will pull a Grant Williams and trade Klay at the deadline? I don't. Keep in mind this. The Mavericks are paying him, what, $16 million a year? I mean, that's not – in today's NBA, that's less than Tim Hardaway Jr. was making, man. The Mavericks didn't pay this guy $30 million. I think he's going to have a good season, though. I really do. Obviously, there's defensive concerns as well, but we shall see. This player, I really wanted to get higher, but again, it kind of came back to, God, there's so many fucking good players in the NBA that I struggled to have this guy higher than this, but it doesn't seem right to me, but this is where he ended up. Dante DiVincenzo, I think, is going to have an incredible season with the Minnesota Timberwolves this upcoming season. I think that he is an interesting, if he does come off the bench, an interesting Sixth Man of the Year candidate. Didn't I pick him to win Sixth Man of the Year? I did, didn't I? Was great in the postseason for the Knicks, nearly 18 points per game, 42% from three on huge volume. 40% from three last year, nearly 9 3-point attempts a game. That is incredible stuff. Top 40? Hell no. Also pretty good with the ball in his hands as well. A solid playmaker. He's going to play so well next to Anthony Edwards. Spacing the floor. Not a great defender. Can, hike his shorts up a little bit from time to time and dig deep and play some good defense, but not a great defender. But a great three-point shooter. I mean, the volume alone is just absolutely incredible. And you might look at this and think it's too low. Then you look at the guys ahead of him. I really don't think it is. I'm just being honest with you. Horrible ranking. He's top 82. All right. Hey, I draw the line at 82. Fuck you. I know that one Warrior fan feels so validated. Which was that the the spaces? We got DiVincenzo! We got DiVincenzo! All right, at 82, I have Emmanuel Quickly. Just a solid as hell player. I don't think he's fantastic at any one thing, but just a really good guard to have. Did he get overpaid? I don't know, maybe. I guess time will tell. But hey, man, from the All-Star break onwards, 21 points per game, almost 6 rebounds per game, nearly 8 assists per game, 59% true shooting. But yeah, a very solid defender, Emmanuel Quickly is. Good defensive playmaker. Super overlooked, it seems, among fans. I do agree, because when that contract extension was announced, I think a lot of people lost their shit at how much money he got. I thought that was fair, honest to God. I really did. Just a really, really solid point guard to have. I think if he's your starting point guard, I don't think you're going out of your way to look for a replacement. He's not a star. I don't think he'll develop into a star. I just think he'll be a solid as hell point guard. He's a 6-man on a good team. I think he could be a starting point guard on a good team. I really do. I actually do. I mean, an incredible 6-man, but yeah, I think he could be a really solid starting point guard on a good team. Toronto was 8.5 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the floor. His 2-man game with Jakob Poeltl was really encouraging. the reason why they brought back Jakob Poeltl at the number he did. There's a reason why they loved Emmanuel Quickley and paid him the amount of money they paid him. Emmanuel Quickley on the Pels would be awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's really solid. That's a good fit. Reader's Digest, 6 months, someone in my fantasy league picked Tatum at 7. Is he delusional? I'm terrible at fantasy basketball. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, him in Minnesota is like a great fit as well, starting point guard, if when Mike Conley rides off into the sunset. But I really like Emmanuel Quickley's game. 82 just feels really low for Emmanuel Quickley, but this is just how it goes. This is just how it goes. Next up, Kobe White, who should have won Most Improved Player a season ago, obviously. But a big breakout season for Kobe White a year ago. 19 points per game, 5 assists per game. Looked great with the ball in his hands. Looked great as an off-ball guard as well. Was 4.5 points. The Bulls were 4.5 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the court. Their offense, 5.5 points. Graded out as one of the better offensive players in the NBA last season. This is a projective list this upcoming season. Was 42% on pull-up threes. Great at getting downhill as well. 61% at the rim. Small number next. This is where they were at the end. This is where they were at the end of season rankings. So I do have Kobe White dropping down a little bit, only because I think Giddey's the addition of Giddey kind of complicates things. Zach LaVine's they're hopeful. I'm sure that Zach LaVine plays more than he did a season ago. And with breakout players, you know that you run the risk that it was a little fluky. Maybe not fluky, maybe not the right word, but you know, I could see a scenario where Kobe White comes back down to earth just a tiny bit. Although I hope that's not true because I really do like him. I like his game. He's also a bad defender, just full stop. So I think this is a fair ranking for Kobe White. This is about where I have guards like this. Speaking of guards who are very talented offensive players, but awful defenders, and this feels low for this guy, but I've always kind of had this weird relationship with this player. And a lot of it's not his fault because I do think his role on his team has just been horrible for him. Hopefully that changes this year. This guy really should be coming off the bench. I mean, it would be one of the better bench players in the entire NBA, and I think it fits more with what the team has going on if he does come off the bench. I'm talking about C.J. McCollum, obviously, who had a terrible series against the Thunder. I'm sure that does affect his ranking a little bit in my mind, because obviously talent-wise and skill-wise, he is one of the most skilled offensive players in the league. I mean, his bag is pretty remarkable. Can be a really good on-ball guard. I think a good on-ball guard in spurts, him playing the point guard is just a disaster, and it shouldn't have happened. It's not really his fault. But also a great off-ball guard, great three-point shooter, one of the better three-point shooters in the entire NBA. 43% on pull-up threes last year, 43% from three in general, 43% on catch-and-shoot threes, high-volume three-point shooter, knocks him down, one of the best shooters in the league, and a good pick-and-roll ball handler as well, but also a terrible defensive player. And would just be better suited coming off the bench, personally. Would you rather have CJ or Clay on the Mavs right now? I mean, Clay just makes more. Clay's size, and Clay's not the defender he used to be, but he's still a much better defender than CJ McCollum. Like, he just fits what the Mavericks need more. Future face of ESPN. Oh, man. But, yeah, a player who's also getting older. Somebody said Father Time. Player who's also getting older. And this just feels kind of fair to me. This is always a round where I have CJ McCollum, like every time. All right, into the top 80. Starting with another guy who is a candidate for Father Time here. And I feel like when Father Time hits this guy, it's going to be bad. When Father Time hits this guy, I think it'll be sad to see, and you saw glimpses of it last year. But god damn it, even though this motherfucker moves at the pace of a snail, even though this guy moves like he's in quicksand, he still gets it done. That is, of course, is Brook Lopez, who it looked like he had concrete shoes on for all of last season. But still, in the postseason, one of the few guys who played well for the Bucks. 17.7 points per game, was 43% from three. Still is so important to what they do defensively. Giannis's defensive rating when Brook Lopez is on the court, 112. When Brook Lopez is off, 121. I mean, he just kind of unlocks a lot of things for them. Opponent shot 6.8 percentage points worse at the rim. Still a great shot blocker. The Bucks defense in general was 8.1 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the court. 35% on catch and shoot threes. Splash Mountain! But again, I cannot just get over how slow he looked last year. And it does scare me. It does scare me. It scares me that there was some trade stuff with him in the offseason. The Bucks can say whatever they want to say, but there was enough smoke there that I really do think they were trying to shopping him at the very least. That scares me a little bit. How do you average 4 rebounds as a center? Well, in his defense, he does play next to Giannis, who's a great rebounder. Who do you think is the random role player that turns into 2018 LeBron when he plays the Mavs? I think it's CJ McCollum. I mean, Miles Turner looks like fucking a prime Hakeem Olajuwon mixed with prime Steph Curry when he plays the Mavericks. Not a role player, but he always pops into my brain. Wasn't he a bad defender in his early years, plus no three-point shot, quite the development arc? I think he was always a good shot blocker. But yes, the three-point, I mean, him developing into what he did is a remarkable story. Coming in at number 78, this is a player I feel like I'm lower on than the consensus. Let's see if you guys can guess based off of what I've said about this player over time. I think a lot of this player is purely based in hypotheticals that I just struggle to see panning out with any real consistency. There have been flashes here and there, but just think that's ultimately what it is. It's flashes in the pan. Is a very, very good defender, but some of the conversations he puts in defensively, I don't think is. It's Jaden McDaniels. I think he's an incredible defender for sure. No doubt about that. I do think there are some perimeter defenders who are better than him. Only because I see some people say that he's the best perimeter defender in the league. I don't think that is true. But for him, they gave him a lot of money, and a lot of that is based off of him blossoming into this guy offensively who can create his own shot. Is he better than Trey Murphy, like dead ass? Jaden McDaniels is an absolutely elite defender through and through. And he has shown offensive flashes. He has. I mean, 44 points on 15 of 20 shooting in the last 2 games of the Nuggets series when they desperately needed him. Usually guards the other team's best player. Is a very, very good rim protector for his size as well. He's a good player. And now that I'm looking at it, 78 feels fair. I feel like that's about where everyone has him. To be fair, him and OG does even less than him on ball, and he just got an even bigger bag. Well, I think OG's a better defender. OG's better offensively. Current McDaniels is a ceiling of Kuminga. I don't think Kuminga will ever become this defensively. OG's a much better defender. He can guard way bigger and stronger defenders as well. OG's staying through and through as he's staying on the fucking court. I mean, we'll get to OG eventually. Next up, dealing with an injury right now. Just got a huge bag in the offseason. A guy that I've been high on for a long, long time. And the proof is in the pudding, folks. Go look on this channel. Been telling you guys about Isaiah Hartenstein for quite some time. We have him here at number 77. Taking a bit of a step back. I don't love that he's hurt going into the season. Going to miss a couple of months, it sounds like. That did knock him down a little bit in my rankings. But the advanced stats love this dude last year. I mean, by defensive EPM, he was the second best defender in the NBA. The Knicks were 11 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor. Their defense were 4 points better. Their offense was 7 points better. He was incredible rim protector a season ago. Opponent shot 11.5 percentage points worse at the rim. And he was a great pick and roll. Oh, yeah, this this picture does make it look like he has a nasty cut or something on his arm. Yes, those are his fingers. Yeah, the when they're healthy and he's on the court, the Thunder defense is going to be absolutely fucking disgusting. He's a great pick and roll guy with a pretty unstoppable little push shot that he has. What is this? 3-ball? Not a shooter. But I'm very intrigued to see what Hartenstein looks like with this Thunder team. Not only that, but what they end up doing. Are they going to start? I think it will end up being matchup dependent, but him and Chet on the floor together is gross in a good way. At 76, here's Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, always one of the hardest players to rank. If it's not this season for him, then it's never. I'll just say that right now. If we don't get like the Kuminga who's been promised to us at times, then this is just who he is this inconsistent player. There is a lot of potential. 74% at the rim. When he gets downhill, that athleticism, that explosiveness is impressive. And he had, what was it, a hamstring injury? 19 points per game, 54% from the field in 34 games before his injury. His numbers kind of tailed off a little bit after that. Great cutter. Good isolation numbers. Monster in transition. There are flashes, but it's just consistency with him. And again, this is a predictive list, so there is a world where he shoots up. Andrew Wiggins did not make this list. I'm not. I feel like if Andrew Wiggins has a great season, good for him. I'm not going to be the one to predict that he's back. Speaking of Canadians, next up, RJ Barrett, who I've always had a weird, interesting relationship with. When he was on the Knicks, didn't really buy into the hype. Admittedly, kind of thought a lot of the times he looked like a bad basketball player. But he gets traded to the Raptors and looked really fucking good. Looked really good after getting traded. Nearly 22 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 39% from three, and an efficient 61% true shooting. Once he got traded to Toronto, the Raptors were 7.3 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the floor. Their offense were 5 points better. He was incredibly efficient in isolation. Got downhill, got to the rim, 40% on catch and shoot threes with the Raptors. We'll see. That's a small sample size. There is maybe a home country buff for sure. But if that's true, because he had a pretty decent Olympic run as well. If those numbers are true, then he's going to step into being like this top 75 player that we all kind of expected out of him at times. But we shall see. Communism merchant? Yes, famously communist country, Canada. It's hard to understand how good a player is who's on a bad team. That is true. Although, I've said this about the Raptors. When they had their main four guys on the court, Scotty Barnes, RJ, Quickly, and Pirtle, they were not a bad team. Or at least that group. Their starting unit was not bad. Net rating wise, they were a good starting unit. It's just their depth is fucking terrible. All right, this next player, one of the more difficult players to rank. In an ideal world, I wouldn't even rank him. Just don't want to deal with it. But of course, he is uber talented, has been not only a top 100 player in his career, but a top 50 player for sure. But injured. Barely played a season ago. Is in a weird sort of dilemma with his team. Is getting closer to 30 and has some very significant leg injury history in his career, which makes it a little bit scary because this player is very, very athleticism dependent. I'm, of course, talking about Zach LaVine. Only played in 25 games a season ago. Last we saw him, 77 games in the 22-23 season. 25 points per game, 60% true shooting. A good basketball player. Is he a winning basketball player? That's what some people ask. I think on the right team, yes, he absolutely could be a player as skilled and athletic as he is. But just a weird player to talk about, a weird player to rank. But yes, a former Mav, absolutely. Imagine telling someone a decade ago that a player averaging 25 points per game is only the 74th best player in the league. Yeah, well, that is how it goes. Now, in Levine's case, it's a little difficult because of the injury history as well as just a weird spot he's in. And I've said it before, he absolutely, if the Mavericks didn't trade for Kyrie Irving, I fucking guarantee you he's a member of the Dallas Mavericks right now. I guarantee you. He's on the Dallas Mavericks. I'd rather have RJ, to be honest. I just do not believe LaVine cares about basketball. Zach LaVine's by far the most talented and skilled player we've talked about yet, I think. Again, it boils down to health and stuff with him. If the last we saw him like fully play, he was a top 50 player in the league. Next up, a player I always have a hard time ranking. I'm not sure why I have a hard time ranking this guy. Miles Turner, who was good for the Pacers in their postseason run, in their Eastern Conference Finals run. Their defense, obviously, 4 points, 100 possessions better when he was on the court. Great rim protector, great shot blocker. Opponent shoots 7.3 percentage points worse at the rim. 2.2 blocks per 75 possessions. 35% on catch and shoot. Really good pick and roll player, especially playing alongside Tyrese Halliburton. A good player. I mean, that's it. This is where I am with him. I feel like this is just kind of his ceiling. Is just a really, really solid center who unlocks quite a bit of things for them. Just at 3-point shooting, it allows them to tinker with their lineups a little bit more. Just anytime your center can provide some serious floor spacing. Hey, Sally, where would prime Marquise Daniels be on this list? Easily in the top 15. Easily. But I think there's some inconsistencies to his game offensively. And I do, he's a great shot blocker, but I do wonder how great of a defender he actually is. This next player, you guys know I love him. Another guy who just needs to be healthy. I don't think a lot of people are fully aware of this guy's game because he's been on a dog shit team forever. That team's probably going to be bad again this year, but they're going to be more fun to watch. They're going to be a team that a lot of people are paying attention to. No, it's not Cade. If you think I have Cade here, you guys are going to be shocked by Cade's ranking. You guys are going to be fucking shocked by Cade's ranking if you think I have him in the 70s. I am talking about Devin Vassell of the San Antonio Spurs. I absolutely adore this guy's game. I think he's going to be an incredible basketball player. And when the Spurs start figuring it out, when some of their younger talent fully develops and they make moves to better their roster and are more competitive, people are really going to see how fucking good of a basketball player Devin Vassell is. Of course, for him, it is just playing basketball. 68 games last year, 38 the year before. And is also a reason I actually would have him higher, but is dealing with a stress reaction in his right foot, and he will not start the season. So, yes, a nasty mid-range jumper. There is he's a little Devin Booker coded. Loves getting to that mid-range, gets so much elevation on that mid-range jumper. Good spot-up shooter as well, gets downhill. Can be a hard-nosed defender. I really love Devin Vassell's game. I really, really do. Stay healthy. Let people discover themselves. You know, let people see for themselves when the Spurs start to become a little bit more competitive and they get more eyeballs. People will see. Vassell. Next up, Sixth Man of the Year winner, Naz Reid. Deserving Sixth Man of the Year last year. Again, I would have voted for Malik Monk if I had a vote, but Naz Reid definitely was a deserving candidate. 40% from threes last year. Great pick and roll guy. And honestly, a much better defender than he gets credit for. So much so that if they do decide to go Julius Randle off the bench and plug Naz Reid into the starting five, I think he's more than capable of holding his own at the 4 defensively, and I think that would actually be much better for them, personally. But, I'm not the decision-making there. A skilled offensive player as well. Does much more than catch and shoot threes. Is a pick-and-pop player, can get downhill and pick and rolls, and can create for himself with the ball in his hands. Just a very talented player who I'm happy that we've all sort of seen what Naz Reid can do. I feel like they have to do Randle off the bench. I just think it would make more sense for their team if Naz Reid starts, but I guess we'll see. Between Naz and Randle, Minnesota got the Mavs killers. That is true. That is true. 36% from 3 in the playoffs. It did feel higher than that, but if memory serves me correctly, he wasn't that great in the Mavs series. 70 Bradley Beal, hard player to rank. I'm not really a fan of his game personally. Let me take that back. I do kind of like his game. Just not. I don't think it was what the Suns needed. Does feel low, but this is a guy who hasn't played a decent chunk of games in quite some time. Consistently injured. 53 games last year, 50 the year before, 40 the year before, 60 the year before, 57 the year before. Hasn't played in over 65 games since 2018, 2019, which is kind of funny because he did used to be an Iron Man. I mean, he had back-to-back seasons of 82 games. Does his contract factor into this ranking? No, it does not. I didn't want to do that. But had flashes with the Suns, especially later in the season as he was healthy and sort of, starting to click a little bit more at the starting 5. I didn't think he was very good in that series at all against the Timberwolves. But a good player in the pick and roll. 1.15 point per possession on spot ups, which is important because I think he's going to be spotting up more than at any other point in his career this year. Obviously, gets downhill, gets to the rim. One of the best guys in the league at that still. But I just kind of feel like this is where I'm at with Beal. He's not a great defender, although I do think he's a bit of a better defender than he gets credit for, but he's not a great one, and it's more of a locked-in thing for him. And we'll see. I think Beal definitely has the capabilities, if he plays, to climb up this list quite a bit. But we'll see. No, he's going to be starting. I don't think Beal's starting spots in question. Next up, we get into this top 70, starting with Mr. Jalen Suggs, who is one of the best defensive players in the entire sport. A season ago, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, one of the best defensive playmakers in the sport, and also took a big leap forward offensively a season ago. Finally saw that 3 ball really start to click up, nearly 40% from 3 on 5 attempts per game. I mean, that's significant. I think you could luck your way into a mid-30s 3-point shooting season. Getting close to 40% feels pretty fucking legit. Has some flaws in his game. Yes, the best jersey swap in history, obviously. How much does he cost, and can the Mavs have him? No, he is a huge part of this Magic team. I am a little bit worried. He is the point guard for the Magic this upcoming season. I don't know if that's a role that fits him, right? Being on ball so much and being the floor general. He's prone to turnovers. I don't know if that's a perfect role for him. Another Marcus Smart. That's a pretty good comparison. I remember when the media was shitting on the Magic for drafting him. Yes, I remember that as well. Yes, Anthony Black, if he does become the starting point guard, and Suggs kind of goes back to what he's best at, which is just being a 2 and just playing incredible defense and shooting threes. Very good basketball player. Next up, another Jalen. Fuck it, man. I'm gonna feel like an idiot, but I'm buying into it. The March conundrum here. The 20-game stretch of March for Jalen Green: 26.6 points per game, 7.1 rebounds per game, 4 assists per game, 38% from 3, 46% from the field. Look, I get it. Yeah, Smart's a better playmaker than Suggs for sure. But look, I get it. How can you have so many flashes in March where you look incredible and not put it together at some point? You know, at some point it's going to come together and be more consistent for Jalen Green. And I want to be right when it happens. I want to say, yeah, I saw it coming. The problem with Jalen Green is the month of January exists. He is playing for an extension, and I think beyond that, he's playing to show this Rockets front office a little friendly competition between him and his teammate, Şengün. Say, hey, I'm the guy. Like, build around me. I can lead us to wherever we want to go. Uber athlete, incredibly skilled. All the talent in the world is there. It's just putting it together. It's locking in on defense a little bit more. I fell for the March stretch. But at a certain point, I mean, you watch him play, and it's not just like putting up stats. He's incredibly skilled and talented, man. Incredibly skilled and talented. At some point, he's still so young. That's going to come together. It just is. It would be surprising to me if it didn't. Great at getting downhill, getting to the rim, explosive finisher. Obviously, some of the best dunks you'll see. The LeBron of Jaden Hardy's. He will eventually become a Hornet or something. Remember in the Slightly GM series, he went to the Pistons, and they were fucking unbelievable. Him and Cade. March, Jalen Green, or bubble TJ Warren? Wow. That's a great question. I don't know if anyone will beat bubble TJ Warren ever. Next up, we have Alex Caruso, newest member of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Obviously, one of the game's premier defenders. 3.4 defensive EPM last year. That was the 5th best in the entire NBA. The Chicago Bulls defense. Not only was it much better when Alex Caruso was on the floor, 7 points per 100 possessions better, but it was completely and totally non-functional once Alex Caruso was off the basketball court. Also shot nearly 40% from 3 a season ago. Not a very good offensive player, but a decent decision maker, a solid connective playmaker. And if he can be around 40% on catch and shoot threes, that's exactly what the Oklahoma City Thunder need. And yeah, his defense next to guys like Chet, next to guys like J-Dub, Dort, Cason Wallace, Shea even is a good defender. It's a fucking nightmare. I mean, it is absolutely nightmarish. Upscale Dante Exum. The LeBron James of Dante Exums. Those 2 weeks of Lonzo and Caruso defense was special. That was a special time. It really was. The Bulls had so much hope, so much going for them. Man. Lou Dort better be one spot above him. I don't think so, man. I don't think so. Poor Cason Wallace behind Dort and Caruso. Yeah. Cason Wallace will be good, though. Next up, we have Herb Jones. Speaking of elite defense. Here is one of the best defenders in the NBA. Herb Jones, need we say more? Incredibly versatile defender. So much so that he's going to be playing center. Top 20 center? Oh, man. Don't like that. I really don't. But when we compare Herb Jones to some of these other defensive-minded guys like Jaden McDaniels, like Alex Caruso, his offensive game is much more advanced, in my opinion. Obviously, the idea of Jaden McDaniels kind of exceeds what Herb Jones provides offensively, but Herb Jones, I think, is better offensively than people give him credit for. He's not like tremendous offensive player, but he is above 40% from three. He does shoot 69% at the rim. I think he's a better offensive player than people give him credit for, and obviously he is a tremendous defender. Yeah, I mean his offensive game is not deep. Like he's not somebody who you're not putting the ball in his hands. You're like, all right, carry us, Herb Jones. This is a predictive list. So thoughts on Tyrese Halliburton and his love for bunnies. He likes bunnies? You know, I had a bunny once when I was younger. They're so stupid. Like, it's a weird pet to have. They're so stupid. Okay, next up. And I will say this straight up. I think this player should be knocked down a little bit. Chris Middleton. Concerning news today that he will be missing opening night, dealing with rehabbing from his multiple surgeries on both ankles this offseason. Absolutely, it concerns me. Already a reason why I have him ranked lower is he's getting older. I don't know. I just don't want my players to have surgeries on both of their ankles in the offseason. But Chris Middleton was really, really, really solid in the postseason and just in general last year. Lord, carry him now. Like he looked really solid last year. He is still a good basketball player. It's just concerning, the injuries and stuff. How much is he going to play? Is he going to be somebody who they can rely on to be healthy and ready to play in the postseason? I think that's what they're really mainly focused on. But I mean, he's just getting older, man. He's a guy who like has been in the league probably a lot longer than you think he has. He's 33 years old. I'm just the ankle stuff concerns me greatly. That's all. That hairline ain't gonna get much further back. Yeah. He's the fish from SpongeBob that's all taped up and broken. No, he definitely still has it. When he's on the court, he was really good last year. But 55 games last year, who knows how many he's going to play this year? I know, he does feel older than 33. Like I said, he's been in the league a sneaky long time. Next up, Brandon Miller. A great rookie season a year ago. I do expect him to take more leaps forward this upcoming season. We saw those flashes at the end of last year. 20 points per game, 44% from the field, 37% from three over his last 33 games. That's a pretty solid sample size there. Got to 38% from three, 7.5 drives per game. Nearly 6 mid-range attempts per 75 possessions at 45%. An advanced offensive game, advanced offensive skill set for somebody his age. Is going to be a very fun player. Rest in peace, Chris Middleton. Welcome back, new Chris Middleton. It is kind of funny having these two next to each other. Definitely can see the comparisons in their game. Murder tax? Jesus. There is a bit of a... I think 64 is a fair ranking for him, and that factors in a leap forward for him if he's a top 64 player in the league this upcoming season. You can tell I've listened to too much Bill Simmons. Top 64 player in the league. Hard not to love Brandon Miller's game. Now, I am interested. Let's just assume LaMelo Ball is healthy and plays a lot this season. What do those two look like? What does a pairing of those two look like? Because the reality is Brandon Miller barely played any games with LaMelo Ball last year. Went back and rewatched your video on last year's draft and you roasted the Hornets for taking him over Scoot. Oh, yeah, I did. So did everyone else. But I absolutely did. he already Charlotte's best player? No. No. Yeah, Mark Williams, who's already hurt. I mean, Mark Williams would probably play 30 games this year. So. No Josh Green yet. Top 63 players of bold take. Hey, man, I'm really going for it. Charlotte is getting a little bit slept on. I say it every year, but fuck it, man. Yeah, there were people who thought Scoot Henderson was going to be better than Wemby. That was a decent one. There was a decent amount of people. I think I said, now granted, this was really early on in the draft process, and I walked back my take, that Scoot Henderson looked so good that there were teams that that if they desperately needed a point guard, wouldn't mind not getting the number 1 overall pick from getting Scoot. Whoops. All right, next up, Michael Porter Jr. of the Denver Nuggets. This feels about where Michael Porter Jr. ends up all the time. Looked incredible. Against the Lakers. Nearly 23 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game, 48% from 3. Overpaid? No, I don't think so. He's so important to their offense with his floor spacing. 44% on catch and shoot threes. Plays so well off of Nikola Jokic. If the Nuggets are going to be good again this year, and I mean really good, he's going to be so important for them. I mean, he has to be important for them. He has to. Has to knock down threes, and I think he has to grow a little bit as a self-creator, which we've seen at times from him. The thing with MPJ is one night he shoots the lights out, and another he breaks every shot from what I remember. I mean, that's a lot of shooters, though, to be fair. That is true. I mean, it was a perfect situation for both him and the Nuggets that everyone was so scared of his back. That remember, he was a top, if it weren't for the back concerns, he might have gone number 1 in that draft. Very, very highly touted player. Which is saying a lot because that was a stacked-ass draft class. That was obviously like the Luka draft class. You see NBA League Pass has multi-view on smart TVs now? Yes, I did. Thank God. All right, here we go. Next up, Derek Lively. This is where I have Mr. D Live. One of the game's most promising young bigs. I don't think this is too low. This feels about right to me. Mavericks. As a rookie, right? As a 19, 20-year-old rookie. 4.3 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the floor. In the postseason, they were 13 points per 100 possessions better. 13 points. Great rim protector as well. Opponent shot 4.5 percentage points worse at the rim. When Derek Lively contested, 2.18 blocks per 75 possessions. He was incredible in the pick and roll. He was second in the NBA in true shooting percentage last year with 73%. Obviously, his shot diet was pretty much not just at the rim, but above the rim. But, there's a post game there that looks like he could develop into. And I just think defensively, I think we really kind of underappreciate what Derek Lively brings to the table. And I definitely think he'll be in contention for an all defensive team spot. Too high for now. Don't be fooled by preseason. Yeah, but I also saw it in the playoffs and in the regular season. Like, Derek Lively was absolutely a top 100 player in terms of impact last year. Hello! 7 months in the slightly delusional club. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Derek, already a top 4 favorite Mav of all time for me. Yeah, I mean, how can you not love him? How can you not root for him? You got to be a real weirdo to not like this guy. Love me some Derek Lively. Don't love me some of this next player, but he is a good basketball player, but I just don't fucking know ever what to think about him. Very frustrating player, and I'm not sure how he fits into winning contexts on teams. And this upcoming season, that is true. And slightly GM, he was an absolute headache. But Logan, 27 months on the Side Delusional Club. Wow, slightly not having Lively top 7. Fake fan. I am a fake fan. I must be. DeJounte Murray, new home with the Pelicans. They bring him in to be the starting point guard. We'll see how that goes. Disgusting. A talented offensive player, obviously. A very overrated defender, right? Jonathan Kuminga and the Warriors will not come to an extension. An overrated defender, and he has been for quite some time now. We saw him next to Trae Young. Didn't really work out. Just kind of a clunky fit at times. Needed the ball in his hands. He's a bit of a ball stopper. Not very efficient as a scorer. His shot diet is very difficult. He does have some playmaking chops. Good at getting downhill. Was 50% on mid-range jumpers last year, which is pretty impressive. Over Lively. I do have him one spot ahead of Lively because he is just... he's obviously a better offensive player. I mean, that goes without saying. A skilled offensive player, and he's going to have the ball in his hands quite a bit on this Pelicans team. He was a good defensive playmaker on the Spurs, which I think sort of clouded some people's judgment. No, he definitely has some games where he pops off. I mean, when the ball's in your hands that much and you're shooting those many shots, like, you're definitely going to have some games where you pop the fuck off. Lively seems more impactful. Maybe. That is true. Derek Lively 100% from 3 in the playoffs. I didn't think about that. Jalen Johnson. So here we go. The breakout year for Jalen Johnson. Kind of does everything on the basketball court. And if he's healthy and plays and continues to build off of what he did last year, I think he's probably a top 50 player in the NBA, which is kind of saying a lot. $16 points per game last year, 7.5 rebounds per game, 3.5 assists. Hawks defense, 4 points per 100 possessions, better when he was on the basketball court. Kind of just does it all. Plays really, really well off of Trae Young. Can be somebody that they run pick and rolls with. Somebody who's shown flashes of self-creation. Great in transition, getting downhill. Shown signs of being a really, really strong defender. This guy's who I wish PJ would become. Well, he's younger, so I doubt it. That would be nice, though. But we'll see. If Jalen Johnson is healthy, and builds off of last year, there's no real reason to think he won't do that. Johnson is really long, but I wonder if he lacks girth. Thank you for that. Next up, we get into the top 60s. Here we go. Fred VanVleet, Freddie All-Star, who had a great season with the Rockets last year, was exactly what they needed. A grown-up, an adult, a stabilizing presence, somebody who could captain the ship offensively. This is not too high. This is not too high. He was so impactful for the Rockets last year. They were so much better when he was on the court. Advanced stats fucking loved him. I mean, pretty much every advanced stat I saw had him as like a top 25 player in the league last year. I think a lot of that had to do with just how much better they were when he was on the court. Shot 38% from 3. Was a good pick and roll player. 8 assists per game as well. And played some really solid defense. That's always been something, right? Despite the size, despite Fred VanVleet's size, has always been a solid defender. People don't like this one. Yes, this is a predictive list. I think Fred VanVleet's going to have another very good season with the Rockets. He's just exactly what they need. Aaron Gordon, for the Denver Nuggets. One of the better defensive players in the entire NBA, plays so well next to Nikola Jokic. Is such an important player for this Denver Nuggets team. Kind of hits another gear usually in the playoffs, it feels like. Obviously, any of the Nuggets starters on off numbers are just absolutely nuts. 8.5 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the court. But again, that's all of their starters. Nobody plays their full starting 5 lineups more than the Denver Nuggets. So all of their on-off numbers are wonky. Any average 4s top 60 if they playing Jokic. While that might be true, I think that does a disservice to how good Aaron Gordon is defensively. Opponents shot nearly 10 percentage points worse at the rim when contested by Aaron Gordon. How about that? Aaron Gordon is an eye test player every time I watch him. He is contributing to winning basketball. Yeah, I mean, 100%. If you follow the Nuggets closely, you know how important he is to them and how good of a basketball player he is. The fact that he's not top 50, again, just speaks to how fucking loaded the NBA is. I mean, that's just it. Mega-sized Sean Marion. A pretty fair comparison, although I will say Sean Marion at his peak was a much better offensive player. Draymond Green at 57, still a very impactful defensive player, still very important for everything that they do, still a great playmaker, even in his old age, even as he is slowly developing CTE and continuing to just wreak havoc on the basketball court. And I don't mean that in a positive way. I don't mean basketball-wise he's wreaking havoc. I mean he's literally damn near committing assault on a nightly basis, it feels like, on the basketball court. But he is still an impactful player. Green isn't better than Gordon. So here's this. This was a tough one, and I mean they are interchangeable. Here's why I would have Draymond Green a spot ahead of Aaron Gordon. Draymond just feels like he's the quarterback for his team. Does that make sense? Aaron Gordon is a great complementary piece next to Jokic. They play off each other so well. The Warriors need Draymond to do all the stuff that they need to do. Green is indispensable for the Steph Curry system. Yeah, absolutely. Love Aaron Gordon, though. And I do think Draymond's taken a bit of a step back defensively. He's not the defensive player of the year that he once was. But he's still an incredible defensive player. Gordon isn't as useful without Jokic. Golden State Warriors isn't good without Draymond. I will say, though, the Nuggets need Aaron Gordon to really be successful. Best nut kicker and chest stomper in the league. He's up there for sure. Here we go. DG the PG here at number 56. A tough player to talk about with just a very disappointing season last year through and through. 57 games, dealt with multiple different injuries. Just never felt like he could find his rhythm last year. Had moments in the playoffs where he just felt like a ghost. And that's always kind of been the thing with Darius Garland, is sometimes he's not aggressive enough. Sometimes it feels like he's trying too hard to get others involved when he just needs to seize the moment and go out and be a great 57 injuries. Yeah, he dealt with 57 different injuries last year. 18 points. I mean, look at the numbers. 18 points per game, 6.5 assists per game, 56% true shooting. I mean, that's not horrible. Like that, those numbers alone are top 100 player. But last time we saw him somewhat healthy, 21 points per game, 7.8 assists per game, 58% true shooting. A Shams bomb, a Jalen Green bomb. Oh, shit. Did they sign him? It's my turn now. Houston Rockets guard Jalen Green has agreed to a 3-year, $106 million contract extension. That feels good. With a player option, that feels like good value. If Jalen Green really steps up, as we were just talking about, that's good. That's solid. Those late season insanity runs tricked them. No, I like it for him. For the talent and the skill set that he has, the potential that he has, if he does blossom into that player and finds more consistency, that's good. That's really fucking good. So, anyways, I'm very hopeful that we get a bounce back season from Darius Garland because I really, really like him. I like his game. Just kind of felt sad watching him last year. Just never felt comfortable. Just didn't look like he was ever comfortable out there. All right, we need to pick this up. This is pacing to be a 4-hour stream, and that can't happen. Brandon Ingram at 55, a difficult player to rank, obviously talent-wise, skill set-wise, top 40 player maybe, but I can't get the taste of the fucking horrendous postseason series that he had out of my mouth. And obviously his fit within this Pelicans team has become very strange. Why is this one bad? You guys think 55 for Brandon Ingram is bad? His game is difficult because I don't think you want him to be super involved. Like, you don't want him to be your number one option. I don't think he's good enough to do that, but he kind of demands the ball be in his hands a lot. 1980s ass player. still an efficient isolation guy. Still a great mid-range scorer. In theory, that should all translate well to the playoffs, but it doesn't. And now his fit within his own team has become weird. We'll see what this season has in store for Brandon Ingram, who it sounds like is playing more of an off-ball role based off what people have seen in preseason and practice and stuff like that. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see. I'd be a little bit surprised if he ends the season on the Pelicans just through and through. Next up is where we have DeMar. This might feel low to not have DeMar in the top 50, but I'm just looking at who's in the top 50. I mean, I don't know where to slot him in. He's so it's interesting. He's right next to Brandon Ingram because they're kind of similar-ish in some of the things I just said. Where if DeMar DeRozan's your go-to guy on offense, I don't know how great you feel about it, but also like he kind of has to be if he's on your team. Still just an incredibly efficient scorer. I mean, with his shot diet, with his game, his efficiency is remarkable. It is. 1.10 points per possession in isolation. That's in the 85th percentile. 1.13 on post-ups. 80th percentile. 1.06 in the pick and roll. 92nd percentile. 46% on mid-range jumpers. Only 34% of his shots assisted. So he's creating his own offense pretty much every single time. I do, you know, the fit with the Kings, they needed some more shot creation in their starting lineup, I think, but it is a little strange with him next to Sabonis and Fox, who also like to operate closer to the basket. It's a bit of a strange fit for a team that probably needed a little bit more spacing. But yes, that's a good point though, Josh. He can space the floor without shooting threes. We'll see how it all pans out. Still a great offensive player, though. Like, still just an incredibly skilled offensive piece. Kristaps Porzingis obviously should be higher than this. Absolutely a top 50 player in the league. But knocked him down because he's probably out until January, it sounds like. And with KP, I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means, like, if just based off of KP's history, from what I remember as a Mavericks fan and his time being here, I would be surprised if he's actually back by January. And then on top of that, I would be a little bit surprised if he's not rusty or dealing with injuries afterwards. But obviously he unlocks everything for them. This shot blocking presence, an incredible rim protector. Opponent shot 13 percentage points worse at the rim when he contested. 2.2 blocks per 75 possessions, 39% on catch and shoot threes, with the average three being 27 feet. 1.28 points per possession in pick and roll. Incredible. Spaces the floor from 30 fucking feet as a 7-footer. 7'3" guy, actually. And 6 playoff games. So the Celtics proved they don't really need him to win. He's this nice luxury piece that they have where they're next to unbeatable if he's healthy and playing. Who the fuck is this? Tingus Pingus. Tingus Pingus at 53. The first quarter of game 1 of the finals will haunt me for decades. Yes, he looked like the greatest player in the history of the sport. All right, Jared Allen here at 52. Love Jared Allen's game. Was injured last year in the playoffs, but he did look really good in the playoffs, which is nice to see because he was rough a season ago. Great shot blocker. Opponents shoot 7 percentage points worse at the rim when defended by him. Good defensive player, good athlete, great pick and roll player as well, and has over his career, this is what I'm hoping for Derek Lively, but over his career, developed a pretty nice post game and a very reliable sort of post hook that he can go to. Good player. Health is the thing with Jared Allen, but a good basketball player. Lively better? I don't think so right now, but Jared Allen's really fucking good. So if Lively did end up being better than Jared Allen, that's really good. OG Anunoby here at 51. This feels low for OG, who you might assume is a top 50 player. I just worry about the injuries. He's injured all the fucking time. 50 games last year. When he was on the court in the regular season, the Knicks were pretty much unbeatable. They were 20-3 when he played. Knicks defense was 16.5 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the basketball court, which is just absolutely nuts to me. I mean, that's over 23 games. That's a small sample, but it's big enough where you're like, oh, wait, what? Obviously, a premier defender. You could make the argument he might be the most versatile defender in the NBA just because of, like, usually when people say a guy can guard up, it's a very rare trait to have. OG Anunoby can actually guard up. He can guard players 3 to 4 inches taller than him, and you wouldn't really notice it. And also, his offensive game is a little bit more developed than I think people think. But again, for him, it's injuries, it's playing, it's being on the basketball court. If he plays 70 games, he'll be a top 50 player, no questions about it. Ironic that we're talking about the Knicks. This next guy up, Julius Randle. 46 games last year, dealt with injuries, was not healthy during the postseason, obviously. Interesting to see how this is all going to play out. I mean, there's a world where the fit is very, very wonky. Right? But there's also a world where his playmaking is a much needed. His ability to create his own shot, get downhill, 14 drives per game, 67% at the rim, 70% of his shots at the rim are unassisted. But yeah, he can be a ball stopper from time to time. And if that is the case, and if you know those ball stopping tendencies comes to the forefront, then this could be a bit of a wonky fit. But also, I do think he's capable enough of playing off ball, being a smart cutter, finishing above the rim, pick and rolls with him, or just kind of handling the ball and letting Anthony Edwards, giving Anthony Edwards a break. Playmaking for himself or others, I can never tell when that word is overused. For all the shit Julius Randle gets, he can be a good playmaker for others. It is just a different type of playmaking compared to a Draymond, for example. I'm trying to compare him to another forward or traditional four, like you would think. Probably just bet against him every game. He's getting MVP votes. I forgot about that. Oh, man. He's the Jalen Green of power forwards. No, I don't think that's necessarily fair. He's more consistent than that. This guy made an All-NBA team recently. All right, into the top 50 we go. Mikal Bridges. Very concerned about that jump shot. That goes without saying. Called it, and it's too high. Is Mikal Bridges at 49 really too high? A great defensive player who he's not better than OG. So this is a predictive list. Part of what goes into some decision making for this is durability. I know Mikal Bridges is going to be on the fucking court. Do I know what his jump shot's going to look like? No, I don't. But I know his ass is going to be playing. He hasn't been great on defense since the Suns days. So I agree with you. I think he's been okay with the Nets. But the context on the Nets was so weird. Becoming the number one option, which obviously should never have happened for Mikal Bridges. Definitely took away from his defense. When he's sort of locked back in and the third or fourth guy on offense now can focus more on his defense, I think that'll help him out tremendously. He's getting overvalued because his fake second half of the season 2 years ago. Maybe. Maybe this is too high. I mean, time will tell. Time will tell. Jaren Jackson Jr. here. I've struggled with his game recently. I got to be honest with you. I've struggled with what I feel about Jaren Jackson Jr. Obviously already injured. That's a problem for him. The reason I struggle with his game. Last year was such a weird year for the Grizzlies in general. 30% usage rate. That was the 11th highest in the NBA. You're not winning any fucking basketball games if that's what's happening. That's just the truth. You're not winning any basketball games if he has the ball in his hands that much. Now, that was just out of necessity. Right? That was out of pure necessity. And in some ways, that might have helped him in the long run. Because he was, nearly a point per possession in isolation. That's not terrible. Over a point per possession on post-ups, that's not terrible. But obviously, it's not the role that you want him to have. And even in a weird lost year for the Grizzlies last year, where Jaren Jackson Jr.'s defense definitely took a little bit of a step back, obviously coming off of winning Defensive Player of the Year, still was an incredible rim protector and shot blocker. And his defense just works better next to a center, which is why having Zach Edey is going to work out nice for him. Obviously, his rebounding leaves a lot to be desired. So he's just not really a center. Does any other sport deal with constantly hurt players as the NBA? Dude, the NFL is horrible. If you take 2 weeks off of following the NFL, you have no clues on the fucking field. Anyways, Jaren Jackson Jr., still a really good basketball player. And hopefully a more just steady season for the Grizzlies helps him kind of return to form a little bit. Next up, we do have Franz Wagner, who I was positive was going to finish higher than this. But it's just not how it panned out. It's just not how it ended up going. Obviously, the big concern for Mr. Franz Wagner, who I do think is a top 50 player. I've seen a lot that a lot of rankings do not have him in the top 50. I do think he's a top 50 player. Obviously, he's the three ball. 28% from three last year. And I think that number actually doesn't even do justice how fucking bad he was from three last year. Because what was it? It was like 18%. It was like 18% in like the last 50 games of the season. I mean, it was horrible. A great defensive player. I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough how good he is defensively. Good at getting downhill, good at getting to the rim, good at finishing at the rim, a solid playmaker. If that three ball gets there, we're talking about a top 30 player in the league, I think, truthfully. But he cannot shoot that bad from three again. He cannot shoot that bad from three again, and if he does, I'm starting to get a little bit concerned, and that does kind of change how I feel about him moving forward. But I do really like Franz Wagner's game. Next up, Desmond Bane. I feel like this might be high for Bane compared to what some other people think. I think Desmond Bane's really, really good. And if the Grizzlies are good and healthy this year, I think people will fully appreciate Desmond Bane a little bit more. Least talked about 1 of 15 game of all time. Yes, Franz unfortunately had some playoff stinkers. But Bane's one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, obviously. And last year, he showed so many flashes on ball creation, playing out of the pick and roll, being a playmaker for others. That really he was, before getting hurt in January, he had an outside all-star case. He really did. Nearly 24 points per game, 5.5 assists per game, 38% from 3 on 8.5 attempts. Those are very, very strong numbers. Every team would get multiple firsts for him. Again, this might sound low, but then you see who's ahead of him, and it's just like, oh, okay. These numbers might, obviously, with Ja Morant back and the rest of the team being healthy, or at least somewhat healthy, these will not be the numbers that he averages, but the shots that he get will be a little bit better quality, and he's shown flashes and improvements and self-creation and stuff that will help them out tremendously offensively. The season without Ja is a blessing for Jaren Jackson Jr. and Bane. Got to just ball and work on their game and improve the Grizzlies. Yeah, I mean, that's a way you can look at it for sure. Okay, next, Mr. Drew Holiday. Still one of the best defenders in the league. His three-point shooting last year was absolutely fucking nuts. 48% on catch and shoot threes. Just felt like he was never missing a three. And I mean, him being on this Celtics team is just the stupidest shit in the world. It really is. But yeah, I mean, we don't really need to say much about Drew Holiday. 45 feels low, but then you factor in guys like Josh Green, Malik Beasley, and Gary Trent Jr. It all makes sense. That's a great way to look at it. Speaking of defense, I have Rudy Gobert here. This feels maybe a little bit low, just coming off of winning yet another Defensive Player of the Year. 4th Defensive Player of the Year for Mr. Gobert. Obviously, he hit the shot heard around the world when he hit that fadeaway over Nikola Jokic in Game 7. That basically sealed the deal. Oh, man. And, I mean, defensively, what can you say? Opponent shot 14 percentage points worse. 2.1 blocks per game. Just an incredible defender. It feels low. I get it. But look, he's a bad offensive player. I'm tired. I'm tired of people trying to gaslight me into thinking he's actually a good offensive player because no, he's not. He's a fucking bad offensive player through and through. And I do think that there are better players ahead of him that aren't the defender that Rudy Gobert is, but they're just much better offensively. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. I'm tired of being gaslit by people on Twitter. Well, actually, offensively, no. He fucking sucks on offense, okay? He just does. But he is an incredible defender. So speaking of incredible defender, I mean, this is a little controversial to have this guy ahead of Gobert, but of course this is a predictive list. One guy is Rudy Gobert. You know who you're getting in Rudy Gobert. This other guy is younger and has finished top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year voting recently. And the upside for him is very, very high if he finally ever gets there. Of course, I'm talking about Evan Mobley, who had some moments in the postseason last year. Looked really good against the Celtics at times. That was very promising. Obviously, an incredible defender. We saw him an uptick in 3-point shooting over the back, final 20 games of the season for him. The efficiency better now. 20 games, not a very big sample size. Every year we do hope for the Evan Mobley offensive leap, and we haven't seen it just yet. But even still, he's still a good offensive player. But we are waiting for the real offensive leap that would propel him into top 20 player in the league status. Let's just be real. If we got the Mobley offensive leap, what is Mobley, 23? 22? He's still really fucking young. He's 23 years old. This will be year number 4 for him. Just 2 years ago, he finished 3rd in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Why do I have him ahead of Gobert? Gobert is definitely a better defender than him. But again, predictive list, if Evan Mobley takes leaps forward offensively, he's better. Another center. Next up, Alperen Şengün. An interesting player to rank. Just an interesting player for me. Thought he took leaps forward defensively last year. Went from being a horrible defender to, I thought, just an okay to passable defender at times. Obviously, for him, it's the offensive game. It is the skill that he has at the center position. It is very Sabonis-esque at times. His playmaking, his post-ups, his ability in the pick and roll, his ability to create for himself and others, obviously. It'll be a big year for Şengün. His boy, Jalen Green, just got a contract extension. He's got to prove that he's worth that contract extension as well. What does Jalen Green signing mean to Şengün? Well, Jalen Green not getting a full max is interesting. I don't think much. I mean, you're not letting Jalen Green walk in free agency anyways. Şengün doesn't move me unless you are historically good on offense. Being a below-average bad defensive center is too much to overcome in nearly all team compositions. I do agree with you, which is why I say he's an interesting player to rank. I just think your ceiling is capped as a team if your focal point is a guy like that. But we'll see this year. He's still young. It's interesting we're talking about that because this next guy, I feel like we had similar conversations about this guy forever. Karl Anthony Towns, Mr. Big Bodega. Incredible floor spacer. Just, I mean, at this point in time, you sort of know what you're getting. Especially in the sense, in the playoffs, we saw him go completely and totally fucking ghost at times, right? But still an incredible offensive player, still an incredible floor spacer. I think we're deep enough into Cat's career now where you do have to question playoff time, 16-game season. What is this guy giving me? Is this guy really helping my team? Is this guy really raising my team's ceiling in terms of championship conversation? But man, when he's clicking and he's bombing threes, he is a monster. 42% from three. 1.4 points per possession in the pick and roll. I mean, him and Jalen Brunson's pick and roll is going to be disgusting, guys. It's going to be really fucking good. It's going to be really good. Same can be said about a lot of the guys you're about to name. No, I mean, that's true. This is this list right here, this area of the list, this part of the rankings, are obviously incredibly skilled and talented players that have some flaws. Otherwise, they'd be higher than this. Now, before you guys get mad at me about having Jamal Murray this low, I'm worried about him. Okay? I just am. So I was thinking about this. I forgot who I was listening to. I was listening to somebody talk about Jamal Murray and how it's not fair that our expectations for Jamal Murray are low. It's not fair that our expectations for Jamal Murray are this low just because of one bad postseason run for him. I'm thinking about it like this, right? The whole Jamal Murray gimmick is that he's a 16-game player. That's the whole gimmick of Jamal Murray, that he's, he decides when he's going to bring it or not bring it in the regular season. He's a little up and down, a little inconsistent in the regular season. But when the 16-game season comes around, when the playoffs come alive, when the playoffs come around, that's when he comes alive. That's when he balls out. And he hit some big shots, obviously, against the Lakers that we all remember. But if that's who you are as a player, this postseason guy, and the last time I saw you in the playoffs, you looked bad. Granted, you looked hurt, but you looked bad. Then what the fuck am I supposed to think about you? That's just what you guys told me that you are is a playoff player, and you were bad in the playoffs. So now what? He stinks. He ruined my GOAT's career. I still think he's a really good basketball player. I mean, I am worried about him. Like, it's kind of hard not to be because the last we've seen him in the playoffs, he looked hurt with a calf injury and just didn't look good. And in the Olympics, he obviously looked like shit. He looked terrible. So we'll see for him. It's just health. He just looked a step slow in the postseason and over the summer. But again, he was dealing with a calf injury, so that makes sense. That is excusable. I just need to see you. I need to see you look good again. And then we're back. No, there's some concern about him in the preseason as well. Shave those armpits? What? All right, into the top 40. This one pains me right here. Impossible to rank this player. Honestly, honest to God, thought about not even putting him in the list. Just thought that you guys would understand me saying, hey, I'm not putting this guy in the list because I don't know what the fuck to do with him. You guys know my love for this guy. But at this point in time, I mean, what the hell are we supposed to do with him? Kawhi Leonard, obviously, when he's playing and on the court and doing things, it goes without saying how good he is. But he's not going to play to start the season. I mean, what? Okay. Let's think about this. 1 to 100, with 100 being the most surprised, 0 being the least surprised. How surprised would we be if it's December 16th, Kawhi Leonard is yet to play a game, and we start to hear some rumblings that, hey, Kawhi might just miss the season? I'd be very surprised, but I mean, I'd probably put it at 50. I mean, when this guy's on the basketball court, what is there to say about him? He's one of the best players that ever has played the game. He's getting older, and I think injuries are kind of taking a bit of a toll on him. He was still really, really good last season when he played, and then obviously got hurt and tried to get it out against the Mavericks. Played in 2 games, just did not look right at all. Just straight up did not look good at all. Kawhi need the Wolverine treatment. I mean, he was clearly injured in that series. But again, was still awesome for the Clippers last year when he played. Still just an offensive robot. Kawhi versus Luka knees was a sad sight. Yeah. I told you guys, when that series was going on, I went to game 3, which was the last game he played. Went to game 3, watched that game in person, went on Locked On afterwards, and straight up said, I doubt Kawhi plays another game in this series. Like, I was just like, I don't think Kawhi plays another game. He looked terrible and did not play another game in the series. So, it's just kind of sad. Have you seen how many Centel accounts are popping up on X right now? Yes, the WNBA Centel is terrible. NBA Centel is kind of funny. Like, sometimes they'll have some funny tweets. The WNBA one is awful. Next up, so when we did the end of season rankings, I got so much shit for how high this guy was. I've toned it down just a tiny bit, and a lot of that has to do with just guys ahead of him I think might have better seasons. But yes, I got absolutely blasted for where I had this guy at the end of the season. That is J-Dub, who I still think is an incredible player. Was really good last year. These are his numbers in the playoffs. This was the problem for him. And it's just, I mentioned this with the Thunder when I did my preseason predictions. Obviously, I think they're going to be an incredible regular season team as long as they're relatively healthy. I mean, they'll be a great defender. They'll be a great defensive team. Part of that is J-Dub, who's a very, very good defender. They'll be a great offensive team. Part of that is J-Dub, who's a very good offensive player. But it's just in the postseason, J-Dub, Chet, one of these guys, prove to me you're ready to go. I'm locked in. I'm the number 2 guy. Don't worry. Shea, you're going to get your 30 points a game. I'm here with you as this second option. Because he did. In a lot of ways, he was the number 1 reason why the Thunder lost to the Mavs. I think beyond the size, I think beyond the rebounding and stuff, which obviously was a big problem for the Thunder, don't get me wrong. But if they just had somebody else there with them, with Shea offensively, that looks like a different series. And you do have to give credit to the Mavs defense, which was really good and locked in. You absolutely have to give credit to the Mavs defense. Jalen Johnson in Atlanta is better. I would love to see that. 24th was a little bit nuts. I agree. That was a little bit out there, huh? But he's a great player, and he had a good regular season. Yeah, PJ Washington versus Thunder is a top 5 player in the league. All right, here we go. Time for some flag planting. This is an uber aggressive rating. I don't give a fuck. This guy is going to break out, and I want to be correct when he does it. I don't even know if a breakout from this guy even lands him this highly, but it is possible. This is where I'm going with Mr. Cade Cunningham, who I thought was good last season. Coming back from injury last year, 22 points per game, 8 assists per game, 38% from 3. The Pistons were 4.5 points per 100 possessions better when him on the floor. We started to see those glimpses of that incredibly complete big guard. That, yeah, some people call Luka light. And watching Cade Cunningham, obviously, not really fair to compare him to Luka. But their similarities are there, right? The similarities are absolutely there. In terms of play style. Obviously, no one will be Luka. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this big guard who uses his size, uses his body to get to his spots, uses his strength to get to his spots, and is a really solid playmaker who has a good amount of defensive upside as well. Mavs Twitter is going to nuke you. I don't care. Why do people get so angry about that? And then people get angry about like James Harden and Luka thing. It's like, yeah, they're pretty comparable. Be real, would Luka win 18 games with that team? Absolutely, yes. Yes. The Luka Doncic of Ray Feltons. Love Cade embracing the Luka comparison. I mean, yeah, he's a big guard who's not like an uber athlete, but is strong, uses his size, uses his strength. The Harden comp I don't get, but I'm not mad at the MVP comparison. I mean, the Luka and Harden comp. You know what? Let's wait a little tiny bit for that one. Scotty Barnes here at 36. Love Scotty Barnes' game. Just feel like he's kind of become this underappreciated young star in the league. Like we were all kind of in on it. He won Rookie of the Year. They went to the playoffs his rookie year, and he was probably the best player on that team. Siakam, but it kind of felt like that was his team. Made the All-Star team last year before getting hurt, and now it kind of feels like no one talks about him at all. Am I off on that? There are some flaws to his game, obviously, that prevents him from being a little bit higher. This will be a big season for him. You're number 4. He's 23 years old. Could he be the number 1 guy? Like, can that be something that we can build around? Obviously, he's continuing to grow as a player, but after this season, I feel like you need to know if you're the Raptors, this is our guy. Like he can be the number 1 option offensively on a team. I don't think that's what ends up happening in terms of just like super high ceiling contention, but I think he could be an incredible number 2 guy. Like if the Raptors somehow land somebody who can be the number 1, I think he'll probably be as good as it fucking gets as a number 2 in the league. With his defense, with his connective playmaking, with his ability to create for himself, get downhill. The Michael Jordan of Kyle Anderson's. I really like. His fans think he's MVP material. I'm going to be real. I think there's an MVP ceiling for Scotty Barnes. I don't know how likely it is he hits it. It's very unlikely probably that he hits it, but it is there. It's there for him, absolutely. I wouldn't predict it. If you don't think Scotty Barnes has an MVP ceiling, he checks a lot of boxes. But of course, just saying that is absolutely nuts because it's very hard to win the MVP. Okay, next up, we do have James Harden, who I do think is going to have a good season this year. Obviously, isn't the dominant offensive force he once was, but still a really, really good playmaker, still a really great point guard. I do think the ball being in his hands a lot is going to be very interesting at this stage in his career. But I do think the pick and roll game with him and Zubac is going to be good over the course of the season. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be so interesting to see this version of James Harden kind of being asked to do some Houston Rockets shit with this team. It's going to be so interesting. So going back to what I was saying earlier, the James Harden and Luka comparisons. I mean, there's definitely comparisons in their game. Absolutely. Please read Hunter's comments. I don't even want to know what a Scotty Barnes MVP speech looks like. I've heard people think Harden will ask out. I don't know. I feel like this is it for him. That's true. In a lot of ways, NBA fans need to be rooting for James Harden to have a great season, because even if he does have a good season, this isn't going to be like a great Clippers team. But they'll just be mid enough that the Thunder don't end up with a fucking 3rd overall pick or something in this draft. There are comparisons, but also differences in the way they approach their game. I think personally, yeah. I mean, they're not carbon copies of one another, but there's obviously comparisons there. I mean, and obviously when you do the Harden and Luka things, once you get to the playoffs, it's a completely different conversation, right? Next up, this is where I'm going with Domantas Sabonis. Yes, I know the memes. I'm not the biggest Sabonis supporter. He seems like a really great guy, especially after watching Starting Five. He does seem like a great guy. And I don't, in my Sabonis hate, I never hate the guy. But I just don't really like the play style very much. That's just it. That's just it. I do absolutely think De'Aaron Fox is better than Sabonis. But I mean, you can't look. I push back on Sabonis being a real life MVP candidate. I push back on Sabonis being somebody who gives you a very high ceiling in the playoffs. Those are my pushbacks with Sabonis. He's a good basketball player, obviously. Obviously, he's a good basketball player. 26 triple doubles last year. I mean, I remember the insane double streak. What did that get to? You didn't grow to appreciate him from the Netflix show? No, like I said, he's a great dude, it seems like. So I don't hate the man. Okay. His wife seemed like a total Karen though. uh I didn't love those parts. I mean, admittedly, have I talked about the Starting Five show? It wasn't made for people like me, which is totally fine. It wasn't made for people like me who's like a total NBA sycophant, who knows everything there is to know about the NBA. I like the more I like the more like Amazon. What is that show that Amazon does every now and then? All Access or some shit like that. I like those where it's more behind the scenes of the season. You're in the locker room. It's more of like the behind the scenes tactics shit, how the players react to losses and stuff like that. It tells the story of a season a little bit better. I like that. This to me felt like it was kind of made for people who don't really follow the NBA, which is totally cool. I did enjoy it. Yeah, it is more of a character dive and more of like a, hey, this is what it's like to be an NBA player. I thought all of that shit was really interesting. But it was very like, hey, let's do a whole Bronny James episode. It's like, okay, I already remembered all of this. Let's do a full Deuce episode. Like, I don't really care about this, to be honest with you. The Vince McMahon, Bill Simmons doc? No, I didn't. All right. Was it good? Pascal Siakam here at 33 had a very underappreciated season a year ago. I think was really really solid in the postseason for them. I think he unlocks quite a bit of things for him. I think he's a really nice secondary piece next to Tyrese Halliburton, getting to the rim. We know that's what Siakam does. 70% at the rim on 11.5 drives per game. Still a great pick and roll player, great post up player, very very solid defender, solid team defender. I like him. I'm interested to see a full season of Siakam with this Pacers team. It's a big reason why, or at least part of the reason why I was pretty high on the Pacers. I had them finishing 4th in the Eastern Conference. I think Siakam is really, really nice piece next to them. Another one, next up, another flag that I am planting on this hill. I've been high on this player in the past. He's a very fucking frustrating player. I saw a shot that I could not believe from the preseason from this guy. A one-legged floater 3-point attempt with 18 seconds left on the shot clock. But god damn it, the talent is just undeniable. LaMelo Ball, he's so incredibly talented. He has to stay on the basketball court. 22 games last season, 58 total games in the last 2 years. But in year 2, he made the All-Star game in year 2, man. And in the 9 games before he got hurt, 32 points per game, nearly 7 rebounds, nearly 9 assists, 43% from 3 on 10.5 attempts. He has to tone it down if he wants to become a winning basketball player. Yeah, bad driver. He has to tone it down. He has way too many habits of a losing basketball player. I don't like the winning, losing basketball player debate because it's very difficult, especially on bad teams. It's like, this guy's an empty stat guy. It's like, well, somebody has to fucking get stats. This is a guy who could drop a 30-point triple-double on any given night. I'm sorry, I will never think that's a losing basketball player ever. But he does have moments where it is like, why? What made you go with that? What made you go with that shot? One-legged 3-point runner with 18 seconds on the shot clock. What made you go with that one? What was the thought process there, buddy? Maybe we tone that one down. I think he has the size, the length, and the body type to develop into a decent defender. It is just about locking in. It's a predictive list. I just want to be right if he pops. That's it. I want to be right. No, he's on Puma. And he needs to fucking wear ankle braces. All right, next up. Talking about winning and losing basketball players, what does it mean? This guy feels like he is an ultimate winning basketball player through and through. Incredibly versatile. This might feel high. It's not. I watched this guy all postseason long. I watched this guy in the finals just be an incredible basketball player. One of the most versatile defenders in the NBA. One of the best defensive playmakers in the entire sport. And a very solid offensive player as well. That is Mr. Derek White. 17.5 points per game, 62% true shooting in the postseason. Advanced metrics absolutely love this guy. They think he's one of the best players in the league. Again, a great defender, catch and shoot player, great connective playmaker, right? An incredible connective playmaker. In a lot of ways, he's a big reason why this Celtics team goes. And yeah, they're stacked. Great team merchant, but the Celtics I think are a great team because of Derek White. Like all of the things he allows them to do. Great shot block. I mean, probably the best shot blocking guard in the league. It's just an incredible defensive playmaker. They're loaded, dude. I mean, they're. It would be so. I'm just gonna say this right now. It would be shocking to me if they did not win the finals again. Would you rather Drew or Derek White on the Mavs? Derek White. Paul George here at 30. A bit of a drop-off. He's getting older. I didn't like that. It looked like he nearly lost his leg already in the preseason. It was really good last year in the regular season, at least. Did have his struggles and Paul George moments in that series against the Mavericks, and that includes having some really good games. That's just the playoff Paul George experience. Wait, so you have Derek White over Cat, Pascal, and Sabonis? Yes. Pascal's the one that I would maybe disagree with. Sabonis and Cat, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd rather have Derek White than those two. Absolutely. Paul George. I mean, again, he had a really good regular season. He ended up making All NBA, didn't he? The Michael Jordan of getting game winner scored on him. Man, that game 4-3 he had in the corner against the Mavericks. No, he did not make All NBA, but he did make an All-Star game. I think he's gonna be really good for this Sixers team. 30 might seem low, but again, he's getting older. The injuries concern me a little bit, and I do think he's the third option on this team. But dude, the top 30 is fucking stacked, man. I'm looking at these names like, holy shit, there's so many good players in the NBA. All right, let's get into the top 30. Lauri Markkanen. I wonder what the narrative of this guy would be if he was on like a really good competitive basketball team. Because it's interesting. He screams third option on a championship basketball team. And he is so good. I mean, obviously as the Jazz number one option, that, you know what? Damn it. The Jazz fuck around and win too many games. Like, they have to shut him down. And when they go full tank mode, he has to not be on the court. Would Lowry make Philly better if you swapped him with Paul George? So I think that's a good question, because I kind of feel like they needed that guy who, if Embiid was out missing time or whatever, is somebody who can generate offense, is somebody who can just sort of go out and give you 30 points and win you a game without your best player, obviously next to Tyrese Maxey. And just having that third guy who can create his own offense is something I think the Sixers have desperately lacked. I was actually thinking of Lauri Markkanen teams last night. I was like, what situation, what winning team goes out and gets Lauri Markkanen? I think every fucking team could. I mean, yeah, the Mavericks would absolutely love to have him, obviously. Imagine him on, like, I don't know how it would work, but Magic is great. Imagine him on the Timberwolves as the 4. Like, oh my God, that team would be unbeatable, in my opinion. But anyways, the Jazz are nearly 11 points per 100 possessions better. I know he's drafted by Minnesota. Just feel it's inevitable OKC will get him. Shams bomb. It's my turn now. Breaking news, Orlando Magic guard Jalen Suggs has agreed to a 5-year, $150 million contract extension. How about that? All right, we've had 2 guys in this top 100 get extensions while we were on. How about that? $30 million a year is the going rate for these guys. Okay. That is the going rate for these guys. Anyways, Lauri Markkanen, incredible basketball player. Next up. So I saw you guys mention Chet Holmgren. Look, I think Chet Holmgren is fucking great. All right. I'm tired of being scared off. I'm tired of you guys screaming at me and it scaring me. Chet Holmgren is very, very good. He's already one of the better defensive players in the NBA. In his 41% on catch and shoot threes was 1 point per possession in the pick and roll. Obviously, we've seen the offensive upside with him, the self-creation stuff. The bag that he has is pretty impressive for somebody his size and his age. I mean, to be that advanced offensively. He did fall off pretty dramatically in the back half of the season, and that bled over into the playoffs where he was 26% from 3. But an incredible shot blocker, a great rim protector. Are there people saying Chet isn't good? LOL, he's a beast. I don't want to say it, but it's mostly Mavs fans. Would you have a fully healthy KP above him? Well, I don't think a fully healthy KP is something that exists, but I don't think I would. I just think Chet is younger. Chet's a safer health bet. ironically. And his game is just a little bit more advanced offensively. Lowry clears. I could see an argument for Lowry being ahead. Although, again, this is a predictive list. Chet going into his second full season in the NBA. Second season where he's actually playing. Would you say he's better offensively than Wemby? Oh, now that's spicy. I know he missed the whole season, but that was kind of a freaky injury. I've been wondering if he's better than Wemby offensively. I would say no. Bro, I thought I got the call. Jump scared. All right, we do need to power through this. I knew this was gonna be a long stream, but at this point, some of these guys, what can you even say? Like we know the rest of these guys are really good. De'Aaron Fox here at number 27. God, remember the first? I forgot. I knew that his stats at the start of the season were absolutely nuts because I actually made a De'Aaron Fox is making a sneaky MVP push video. But over his first 25 games of the season, 30 points per game, 40% from three. And it tailed off quite a bit for him at the end of the season. Sort of just felt like he smashed into a wall, but he was still an incredible player. Good offensive player. The Kings were 9.5 points per 100 possessions better when he was off the floor. Is Fox a playoff rising caliber player? I don't see it in late rounds. I think he has a game that could translate to the playoffs. Yes. Good defensive playmaker as well. Yep. Yeah, that's true. He led the league in steals. And obviously one of the fastest players really the sport's ever seen with the ball in his hands. The jump shot is what is concerning for him. Everyone thinks Shea did. Well, Shea led in total steals. Which, by the way, is a stat nobody ever gives a shit about total stats, but it is funny whenever someone's favorite player leads the league in a total stat and we start talking about it. Damian Lillard here at 26, who I do think is going to have a good season this year. The reason he drops a little bit is there's guys who I'm predicting leaps forward for, and then guys who just weren't ranked last year due to injuries who are ahead of him. But Dame quietly had a good season last year. I say quietly because I feel like the Bucks were such a big disappointment that we sort of tied that back to the Damian Lillard trade. But he was good for them. Nearly 13 points per 100 possessions better the Bucks were when he was on the floor. Still graded out as one of the best offensive players in the NBA. 3.8 offensive EPM. That was 22nd in the league. Was still just an absolute monster from three. And did play well in that series. Did play well in that series against the Pacers. Just, they were just so injured, man. I mean, what's the number in the parentheses? This is where I had them at the end of the season last year. Paolo Banchero, obviously we are banking on a bit of a step forward here for Paolo. I don't think if you just looked at the totality of his career, you would say that he's a top 25 player in the league right now. But going into year number 3, coming off of obviously the best season of his career, coming off of a very successful season for the Magic, and coming off of a very, very strong showing in the postseason in his first playoff experience, I do think we should expect Paolo Banchero to take a step forward. And what does a step forward for Paolo look like? Obviously, it's improved efficiency, and it's just continuing to grow and develop as a playmaker. Way too low? Again, you might think that, but then you look at who's ahead of him. And it is difficult. It is difficult to pencil him in, especially if you're just fully banking on a big step forward where there's other guys who are just more established. Looked like he slowed the game down for himself during the preseason. And I fully expect Paolo to become a top 10 player. Absolutely. And I don't know if that might come this year. Again, we're gonna go a little bit faster through these because it's still. I mean, we know what there is to say about these players. Bam Adebayo, obviously one of the best defenders in the entire sport. The 3-point shot with Bam Adebayo, just keep an eye on it. If Bam Adebayo's getting up 1 or 2 threes a game, that's interesting. That is interesting, but one of the best defenders in the NBA. You guys know I picked him to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think his campaigning and just being annoying about it is going to pay off. Bam should be higher. Again, Jimmy should not be the side. So I have Jimmy next. Difficult player to rank, obviously. Doesn't play a lot. Only played in 60 games last year. Missed the entire postseason. But he's still really fucking good when he's on the court. The Heat are still just so much better when he's on the court versus when he's off. And at a certain point, I mean, you just have to take that to mean this guy's really good. Is Clutch paying Bam to cry about not winning Defensive Player of the Year? How did Jimmy climb? I kind of believe in him this year. I don't know if it's him showing up for Media Day more serious, but I'm kind of a believer. I kind of think the Heat might have a surprising season. Where does Miami trade Jimmy to in January? The Warriors in some panic-ass trade. Another very difficult player to rank. Zion Williamson. Obviously, talent-wise, we're talking about a top 15, maybe even top 10 player in the sport. Did play in 70 games last year. Just so unfortunate and sad that he hurt himself in the play-in when he looked so good in the play-in. Looked so good in the play-in that it looked like he was going to make the playoffs for the first time and really ball out. Unfortunately, that was not the case. But still just an incredibly efficient offensive player. Gets downhill. 19 drives per 75 possessions last year. 67% at the rim, with only 30% of those shots being assisted. Jonathan Kuminga believes he could have a star trajectory similar to Kawhi Leonard and Pascal Siakam. I'm sure he does. Would the Pelicans beat OKC with Zion? No, I don't think so. But it would have been a lot more interesting. Just an incredible player. I just hope we see him healthy. I mean, that's it. I really do. Tyrese Maxey here at 21. An incredible year last year. My God, I forgot. I didn't really forget. But then looking at the numbers, just how incredible he was in that series against the Knicks. 30 points per game, nearly 7 assists per game, 40% from three. Obviously hit some massive shots in that series. This guy's a very fucking good basketball player. Very good. I think the Paul George addition is going to help him out tremendously as well. And I do think we could see an All-NBA season this year for Maxey. I definitely think that that's something that's in the cards. Can Maxey be the East's best point guard this season? You know, that's asking a lot, but I don't feel like there's a 0% chance of that happening, if that makes sense. 47% on catch and shoot threes. 62% at the rim. Most of them created by himself. At number 20, here's my guy, Trae Young. I will always be higher on Trae Young than the consensus. Only played in 54 games a season ago. Still one of the best offensive players in the sport. 18th in offensive EPM. Nearly 11 assists per game last year. Basketball Index ranks him as one of the best playmakers in the sport. That goes without being said. A great pick and roll player. With DeJounte Murray not there, just making life a living hell for everyone on the Hawks. And God bless him, but that's just true. With him not being there, I think we see a very good Trae Young season. And also, hey, there's a trade possibility there. You think the Magic could go out and get Trae? I don't think the Magic would be in the market for Trae, but I don't know. Spurs, Lakers, I don't know. Do or die year for Trae? Let's get into the top 20, shall we? At number 19, this is where I put Tyrese Halliburton. Tale of two seasons, obviously, last year for him. Before the All-Star break, looked like an actual real MVP candidate, or before his hamstring injury. 23 points per game, 12.5 assists per game, 50% from the field, 40% from deep. And then afterwards was just it just didn't feel like he was ever healthy. 17 points per game, 9 assists per game. The efficiency tailed off dramatically after the injury. But he did have moments in the playoffs where he looked good. I think he's a really good basketball player. Didn't a CBS ranking have Tyrese Haliburton at 7th in the league? I think that was the Action Network, wasn't it? They had him like 6th. This is high. This is way too low. He's a polarizing player. When we're talking about rankings, people are all over the map with Haliburton. Harden is straight up better. I just don't agree, man. I mean, I don't know how you could have watched him. Again, a tale of 2 seasons, but when he was healthy before the hamstring injury, dude, they were so electric. I mean, he was just like incredible leading that team. Obviously, the look away passes are fucking hilarious, but another Shams bomb. It's my turn now. Corey Kispert has agreed to a 4-year, $54 million extension with the Washington Wizards. That's actually a nice deal. Let's move on. Number 18, Kyrie Irving. An incredible season last year for Kyrie Irving, accumulating in an NBA Finals appearance. Sorry, you're putting Kyrie as a number 2 option higher than number 1 options that are better but asked to do more. It's not serious. Why not? Honest to God, why not? Mavericks tax? Honestly, why? I want to hear why. Kyrie's the number 2 option, putting up number 1 option numbers. Kyrie Irving had an interesting postseason. 22 points per game, 5.1 assists per game, 56% true shooting in the playoffs. Obviously, against the Celtics, he was terrible. I mean, there's no 2 ways around it. I keep seeing people frame his series against the Thunder as him having a bad series. I disagree with that, actually. I disagree with him having a bad series there. Obviously, numbers-wise, it wasn't great. But going back and rewatching that series, or just watching it in general, the Thunder basically said Kyrie Irving's not beating us. We can live with playing Luka one-on-one, which is what they tried to do, but we're going to send help at Kyrie Irving. And I thought his playmaking in that series was very good. I thought his defense in that series was very good. Obviously, in the Thunder series, he was absolutely awful. And in the Western Conference Finals, he was fucking incredible against what was one of the best defenses in the history of the sport, or at least recent history of the sport. 27 points per game, 49% from the field. He graded out as one of the best offensive players in the league last year, 11th in offensive EPM. He was 41% from 3. He was 61% at the rim. I mean, just an incredible offensive player. An incredible offensive player who can be the guy with the ball in his hands. We know that. But also is just an incredible off-ball guard. Speaking of number 2 options, Jaylen Brown. Could this be a number 1 option, huh? Obviously, an incredible postseason run by him where he wins Eastern Conference Finals MVP as well as Finals MVP. Great at getting downhill. A very strong player who uses his body. Jaylen Brown, top 12 player. I actually wanted to get him higher, but it was very difficult to do it. Very good defensive player as well. Just an incredible number 2 option to have. Probably the best number 2 option in the league, or up there at least. Who do you fear more, Brown or Tatum? I mean, as a Mavs fan, it was Jaylen Brown. Like, he fucking kicked our ass in that series. We'll obviously get to Tatum here in a bit, but advanced stats are low on Jaylen Brown. I think part of that, advanced stats for the Celtics in general are kind of strange just because their team was so stacked, and so many advanced stats are just so reliant on on-off numbers. Yeah, advanced stats can be wonky. All right, 16 is where I have Mr. Ja Morant. Difficult player to rank, obviously, because when last we saw him on the court was probably a top 10 player or right around there. Obviously, only played in 9 games last year, so all of these stats were from a couple years ago. Regraded out as one of the best players in the NBA. Obviously, just a fucking nightmare getting downhill, getting to the rim, finishing above the rim. Incredibly explosive athlete. One of the nastiest in-game dunkers we've ever seen. The three-point shot is obviously something that's going to swing a lot of things for him. But he's grown a ton as a playmaker. And I think this is a fair ranking for Ja. Like, if he plays a full season, he'll finish higher than this. I'm telling you that right now. It's just hard to fully bank on him being better than some of these guys, only because we have not seen it. We have not seen him in quite some time. Here's where I went with Vic, number 15. Couldn't convince myself to put him in the top 10, but I do think we're going to get an incredible season from Victor Wembanyama, who had a 3.1 defensive EPM last year, 7th in the league. Not only that, but that was the highest rookie season ever in dunks and threes database, which only goes back to 2014. He's already one of the best defensive players in the league, if not already the best defensive player in the league. That goes without really saying. Just sort of expect him to get better as he grows, as he's surrounded by better defenders. And, I mean, over his last 45 games, folks, 23 points per game, nearly 11 rebounds, 4 blocks per game, 1.2 steals per game. Why do I not have him higher? It's hard. I wanted to put him in the top 10, but then you look at the guys who are ahead of him. They're established stars in the league, established all-stars, established all-NBA players, who you know you're getting night in and night out. And, yeah, the reality is you are projecting some things for Wemby, especially offensively, and it just still kind of feels, watching preseason and stuff, that he has some habits offensively that are going to bump him down a few spots that he needs to work on and work out. But he's 20 years old, man. 21 years old, second-year player in the NBA. Vic is a top, I would say, over 6.5. Top 10, that would be an incredible season for him, obviously. But, I can't lie, man. I'm going to see him in person on Thursday. Like, I'm incredibly excited. All right, here's Donovan Mitchell, who I feel has weirdly is weirdly kind of just an overlooked player. He stinks? I don't think this is high for Donovan Mitchell, dude. I really don't. An incredible scorer, an incredible three-point shooter, obviously a great athlete, good at getting to the rim, good at finishing at the rim, finishing above the rim, a very, very strong playmaker as well. And when he needs to dig deep and play defense, he can. I'm not going to lie. I toyed with the idea of maybe having Donovan Mitchell in my top 10, because there's spots open in the top 10. I'll just tell you that. He's a great finisher around the rim. Super underrated there. I think he's actually a little tiny bit underrated in general, to be honest with you. Devin Booker here at number 13, another great two-guard. Him and Donovan Mitchell, there's always constant debate back and forth who's better between those two. Devin Booker's, this is going to sound stupid to say, but Devin Booker's performance in the Olympics was so impressive to me. Not really surprising, but just so impressive how he played. Just being cool with being the two guard, the off-ball guard who just did whatever the team needed him to do. Just a great, I mean, what do I need to say about Devin Booker? He's a great basketball player. He's a great role player. He's not a great role player. He's a star. I mean, Devin Booker is through and through a star in the NBA. Best point guard in the NBA per the Ringer. Yeah, that was a fuck up by them. Steph coming up, I can feel it. Well, good call. Here's Steph Curry at 12. I'm sorry. I couldn't put Steph in my top 10, man. I couldn't do it. I couldn't get there. The inconsistencies that popped up last season were a tiny bit concerning, just because, you know what? He's old. I was listening to other people. I think it was Jason Timpf. He was like, "Yeah, I think Steph, who was inconsistent last year, I think he locks back in and is a lot more consistent this year, and he doesn't have that bad stretch this season." I was like, "Man, he's going to be 37. Like that might just be it might just be who he is now, where he's still an incredible basketball player." Still an incredible basketball player. And it's kind of crazy where we say, like, he was inconsistent last year. For Steph standards, he was a little inconsistent. 40% from three, 44% on catch and shoot threes. Just, like, still far and away the best three-point shooter in the league. Still far and away the best three-point shooter in the league. He also just didn't look as good without one other good offensive option on the court. And that's the thing, too, is I feel like there's going to be so much asked of Steph this year that it might not be fair. 11 is where I have Mr. JB, Jalen Brunson, who was a top 5, top 6 player in the league last year, but I don't know if he gets there again. I think it was a great season for him a year ago, and I think we kind of settle on him being like a top 10 player instead of this top 6 player. That'd be incredible if he was like, hey, I am a top 7 player in the NBA. I would hope, watching them in the preseason, it does not appear that this will be the case. But I would hope that they tone down his usage a tiny bit, to be honest with you. The Knicks offense can be very, very, very Jalen Brunson dependent sometimes. But man, he had an incredible season last year. Just an incredible season. His ability to finish at the rim and his size is like honestly borderline unbelievable. His footwork from the guard position is maybe next to none. And he's just a fucking pit bull, man. He's a dog. He is a dog. Underrating Brunson? I mean, I have him as a top 11 player in the league. Let's get into the top 10, shall we? Starting here with Anthony Davis. Obviously, always one of the more difficult players to rank. Looked good in the playoffs. Has looked really good in the preseason. One of the best defenders in the sport. And still, on any given night, can be just an absolute nightmare offensively. I like this ranking for him. I think he's still a top 10 player. In no world is Anthony Edwards better than AD. Well, here I have Anthony Edwards at 9. This is the top 10 leap. All right, honest to God, why not? All right, let's talk about it and discuss it. We're not talking about a 32-year-old player who's peaked. We're talking about a young player who's continuing to improve each and every single year he's been in the league. All right, 23 years old, entering year 5, coming off of easily the best season of his career. And yeah, he had some moments against the Mavs in the postseason. Looked like he ran into a wall. Like his conditioning needs to improve. Just looked like he was done and gassed by the end of that series. But still had a really, really strong postseason. I mean, he was incredible in that series against the Suns. I think we'll see a playmaking leap from him. Obviously, when it comes to getting to the rim, it's much watched television when Anthony Edwards gets ahead of steam going downhill. Him being a top 9 player is not this out there fucking outlandish thing that you guys are making it out to be. Honest to God, can be a really good defender as well. And yeah, let's not forget the aura. He's got aura. He needs to eat more bananas and adjust his pH level. That was actually a really funny moment in starting 5 when Anthony was like, just take my body seriously, like always constantly working. And then they immediately show him leaving the gym and he's eating Domino's pizza. Next up, I cannot believe that LeBron is here, but yeah, he is. I mean, I think LeBron's still a top 8 player in the sport. He's going to be entering, what season is this for him? 22? Is this season 22 or 21? Season 22 for LeBron James. He's going to turn 40 years old in only a few weeks. But God damn it, I'm not picking him to fall off. Sorry, not picking him to fall off. LeBron's age doesn't downgrade him like Steph's. I think LeBron's a better player. Sorry, I just do. I just do. And if I'm doing an aging scale, one of these guys is LeBron's a robot, and this type of shit doesn't apply to him until it inevitably will. But I'm not predicting it to happen. But I'll still take the 6'7" freak athlete or 6'9" freak athlete versus the smaller guard. I'm done rooting against this guy. He's immortal. Man, join the dark side. Join the LeBron is the GOAT dark side. 51%. He shot a career high from 3 last year. In year 20. In year 21. Just insane. Honest to God, absolutely insane. I have Kevin Durant here at 7. A lot of these guys are interchangeable. I think Kevin Durant's about to have a really, really good basketball season. In Budenholzer's system with the ball movement and stuff. I think it's really going to help Kevin Durant more than anybody else in that roster. I think he's going to get so many good looks. I think he's going to finally get like a very healthy amount of catch and shoot threes up, 45% on catch and shoot threes last year. Hopefully he gets to the rim a little bit more as well, 78% at the rim, but just very low volume, obviously. Never really been a guy who creates for himself at the rim. Still one of the most efficient scores in the league, and then defensively, just a very solid defender still. They might be asking a little too much out of him defensively this upcoming season at his age, but still a very solid defensive player. And I just think the addition of a point guard, all of this stuff, is going to help him out tremendously. All right, here's where I have Jason Tatum. Now look, we can sit here and argue and yell about it. I went back and I looked at the numbers, and obviously Tatum's kind of stinker postseason performances really sort of really hid the fact that he had an incredible regular season. I mean, I looked at the numbers, and I forgot his regular season was as dominant as it was. Here's the thing that's always going to work in Tatum's favor, and especially in a predictive list like this, he always fucking plays. He always plays. He's going to be out there on the court. And I thought he had a really good season last year while not having a great three-point shooting season. He's a very versatile defender. I mean, we saw it in the playoffs. I mean, you can say whatever you want about Tatum. He did a good job against Derek Lively. And him being able to switch on to Derek Lively and that just being something the Celtics were comfortable with really changed a lot of things in that series. And also in the postseason, I do want to give him some props. I know I make fun of Tatum and stuff. Everybody does. But I want to give him some props. His playmaking in the postseason was really, really good. Like it was. It was really, really good. So I'm okay with putting him here. I really am. And then I have Embiid at 5, which he played in 39 games last year. He's already said he's not playing back-to-backs. There's no way he plays 65 games this upcoming season. Here's the reality about Joel Embiid. And I'll just say this, okay? I'll just say this. There is zero argument when he's on the basketball court that he's not a top 4 player. Obviously, I have Shea ahead of him. I'm sorry. Embiid is a much better basketball player than Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Maybe much better strong, but he's a better basketball player than Shea Gilgeous-Alexander when he's on the court. But I am taking into account the fact that he is going to miss time. I am taking into the account that, you know what, he's going to be 31 at the start of next postseason. He's yet to do anything in the fucking playoffs, really of note, although he was good in that series last year, dealing with so many different injuries. But when this guy plays it and is on the court, he's absolutely a top 4 player in the sport. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Is he hard to watch? Of course, yes. If availability is an important metric, then shouldn't AG be ranked higher than Draymond? Maybe they were one spot away from each other. Don't read into that too much. He is a dirty basketball player. Yes, all of these things are true. He's a dirty basketball player. He's been a playoff choke artist. He has big durability issues. He's a flopper. Yes, this is all true. All of it is true. When he's on the fucking basketball court, he's a nightmare. That's also true. Okay. Who would you have in the playoffs? Aaron Judge or Joel Embiid? Aaron Judge is the Joel Embiid of the MLB. All right, so we know what the top four is. I mean, do we really need to spend too much time? 4, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think he's going to have a great season. Was incredible last year. Just the consistency Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has is nuts. The 30 points per game. The fact that you can average 30 points per game and never score 50 is crazy. He was first in playoff points per game. Scoring 31 is a gimmick. The just sheer consistency of which he scored last year was absolutely crazy. And he was awesome in that series against the Mavericks. He was absolutely awesome. Just didn't have really any help at all. I do think that there's a gap. Like I don't know if I can put Shai in the conversation with the top 3. I just think those 3 are better. But Shai is absolutely incredible. Obviously, when it comes to getting to the rim, there's nobody in the league who's a more prolific driver than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander getting to the rim. His mid-range game is disgusting. I mean, absolutely fucking disgusting. His bag is incredibly deep. He's so shifty. He's so crafty. Is he a little unethical from time to time? Maybe. But let's be honest, guys. He's a really good basketball player. Who, if he sees an uptick in 3-point volume, I have to imagine he probably stays around the same efficiency. A little scary. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. At number 3, I have Giannis. I do think that there's a gap here, and I'm just going to be honest with you. You guys already fucking know who I have number 1. I think all 3 of these guys have arguments to be the best player in the league. Obviously, for Giannis, why would I put him 3rd behind the other 2? Well, we haven't seen him in the playoffs the last 2 years. He's been hurt in the playoffs the last 2 years. If I'm going to punish guys like Jokic for that, or not Jokic, sorry. If I'm going to punish guys like Embiid for that, don't I have to do the same for Giannis? Like, don't I have to keep it a little consistent there? Right? But still one of the best players in the league. I mean, still an incredible defensive player. Although I do think some people kind of, maybe not overrate him defensively, but overrate what his role is defensively. Still an incredible defensive player. An incredible scorer. What else is there to say? A great playmaker as well. That's something that he's really improved on over his career. You got to have Luka at 1 if you believe he's going to win MVP. Of course I have Luka at 1, man. Are you fucking joking? At number 2, we have Nikola Jokic. I mean, do I even need to talk about these guys? Plus 23 on off. Plus 23 on off. Good God. I mean, what's there to say about Jokic? The ultimate floor raiser, the ultimate ceiling raiser. Everybody's just 10 times better when they play with this guy. An incredible playmaker. An incredible teammate. A very, very capable scorer. Leads the league in VORP and cum. Yeah, he does. Leads the league in glorp as well. Obviously, an advanced stats darling, but he is still a great I mean, like, we can joke about the calculator stuff, but he's an incredible basketball player. I mean, that doesn't. Imagine Jokic made a trade and wants to play with Luka. Couldn't see that ever happening. GOAT and kitchen sink stats, yes. Of course, he leads the league in kitchen sink. But you know who was number 1 in kitchen sink in the playoffs? Luka Doncic. Who? Let's just see. What's the narratives about Luka now? Because all last season it was he's not a winning basketball player. Are we sure you can win with Luka? Let's dispel all of that nonsense right now, okay? Because I'm gonna tell you something right now. Only the Boston Celtics as a team have won more postseason series in the last 2 years than the last 3 years in the Dallas Mavericks. Think about that. When it comes to the Western Conference, right? All these other guys who are winners, winning basketball players, we question whether Luka's a winning basketball player or not. In the last 4 seasons, only the Dallas Mavericks have made the Western Conference Finals twice. Only the Dallas Mavericks have made the Western Conference Finals twice over that stretch. The Denver Nuggets haven't done it. The Timberwolves didn't do it. The Suns didn't do it. The Warriors didn't do it. 5 postseason series wins in the last 3 seasons, being the betting favorite in one of those. 6 seasons in the NBA. 5-time all-defensive first team. All-defensive first team. That would be nuts. 5-time All-NBA first team. Voted a top 5 player in the sport. 5 of his 6 seasons, with the 1 season he wasn't being his rookie year. I mean, what a basketball player, man. Graded out as the best offensive player in the league last year. Obviously led the league in scoring. Damn near averaged a 34-point triple-double over the course of the season. It's incredible what this guy does. And I just hope the Mavericks win enough games this year that we can just fully fucking appreciate what Luka does without having some dumbass, nonsensical narrative surrounding him. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case because I don't know if I've seen what a weird final series where it feels like Luka's reputation took a hit despite the fact that he made the NBA Finals, and Tatum's reputation took a hit despite the fact that he won the NBA Finals. Very rarely do you see something like that. But man, what a basketball player. Luka was the 9th best ISO defender last year, by the way. Yeah, there's plenty of defensive metrics that say that Luka was a great defender. I wouldn't say Luka's a great defender. I'm just going to tell you right now. I don't think Luka's a great defender. I think he gets caught ball watching too much. I think as a team defender, he slips up too much to be considered a great defender, okay? Which that stuff is just as important, if not even more important at times, than individual isolation defense or whatever the case may be. But when he locks in, he is a fine defender. Okay, and I know the fucking blow-by percentage stats that everyone said, a stat that I'd never even heard of in my life before the final series. Whatever. He led the playoffs in steals. He led the playoffs in defensive. What was it? It was some defensive win shares, which I do think is a volume stat, but it's still just kind of hilarious. Drop off from top 5 is as huge as literally never. I actually do agree. I feel my top 5 feels locked and like written in fucking stone. Embiid, I get it. Embiid, I get the hesitations, and I had him outside my top 5 at the end of last season. But when I'm just factoring in what he does on the basketball court, I don't think I'd be surprised if anyone else cracked the top 5 this year besides these 5, assuming if Embiid misses half the season or whatever. But. So yeah, the top 10 outside of the top 5 was difficult. You can make arguments for any of the guys, like from 15 onwards, I think. Yeah, and Luka's just younger and getting better every single year of his career. So, man, there it is, my top 100 list. We are 3 hours into it. Who outside the top 15 can jump in the top 7 discussion in October 2025 for you? Paolo Banchero, for sure. John Morant, definitely, if he's healthy and plays a lot. Zion, if he's healthy, could definitely find his way in there. Chet, I don't know. Top 7, no. I don't really know if any of these guys have like top 7 upside outside of there. Cade, sneaky. Brunson, for sure. Brunson has a season like he did last year. He'll be in the top 7 conversation. But he said outside the top 15, I have Brunson in the top 15. So anyways, that was my list. I would do a full-fledged going through each and every one of these picks again, but I'm not doing that. We just did it for 3 hours. You don't need me to do it anymore. All right? Wow. That's that. And just like that, it feels like the NBA season is now starting. Feels like the NBA season is now. We're ready to go. Will you be doing a Watch These Rookies special? Probably not. We're damn near 24 hours away from the NBA season starting, man. Let's go. I'll be on Lockdown tonight, again, 7 p.m., I think, around there, on the Bid and Skin Show. They're debuting a preseason preview that we did. That was a lot of fun. It's a good episode. Make sure you tune in to that. Tomorrow, playback.tv/slightly biased. We'll be watching the opening night together. And then Wednesday morning, slightly early on this channel, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Who's my East team this year? Like, what team am I rooting for in the East? The Magic. NFL top 100 players coming out soon. All right, thank you all for coming out. Thank you guys for hanging around for this long ass stream. Thank you guys for hanging out for all of these off-season streams. We're fucking ready to go, baby. We're ready to go. You gonna sign up for the Mavs live new streaming thing they put out? I'm not sure. I have to look into it a little tiny bit more to figure out what I need to do for that. Because damn, $130 is a lot of fucking money. All right, love you all. Thank you all very much for coming out. All the OGs, I love you guys very much. Could have spent your Monday afternoon anywhere in the world you decided to spend it here. New subscribers, I promise you guys will not regret it. Donations, members, thank you guys so much. You never have to do that. Helps me out tremendously. Makes you feel so good. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. See you tomorrow night on Playback. See you Wednesday morning here as we discuss opening night. And slightly early makes its season debut. Love you all very much. Bye. 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 Bye.